Good morning. We're going to go ahead and begin. Thank you all for joining us this morning. This is the second meeting of the Senate Study Committee on Truck Driver Shortages. We anticipate probably having one more meeting. We'll have information on that hopefully in the days to come. Before we get started, I know Senator Islam will be here. We have Senator Dozal is on the Zoom, and also Senator Gooch, and Senator Jones here also. I'm going to let them maybe give some brief comments, but before we begin, we'll just open a word of prayer, and then we're going to get this party started. So, dear Heavenly Father, thanks for bringing us together this morning to talk about issues in Georgia, talk about the families and businesses that are impacted in the trucking industry that move product and freight and keep all of our lives together in some ways big and some ways small. So we pray for the truckers on the road. We pray for everybody in this room and the leaders of our state to make decisions that are best for the citizens of Georgia and all of our communities when we go back home to make sure we honor and glorify you. With that, amen. So we're going to begin. I do want to recognize my esteemed colleague from Henry County for joining us today, Senator Emanuel Jones. Emanuel, I'll let you, if you have any brief comments, just kind of open us up and just say hello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, I'm State Senator Emanuel Jones. I represent Henry and DeKalb County. And when I'm not serving in the legislature like I have for the past 19 years, I'm also trying to run my car business. So I am in literally the transportation business and looking forward to some concrete steps that we can take in improving the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I know Senator Dozal's he's on the line. Might be a little hard right now to get him here on the Zoom. Kind of feels weird. He's like here in the computer screen, along with the Senator Gooch, who's calling in from North Georgia. But they both say hello, and as they have questions, I'll share those with the group. So first I want to thank Kevin Perry. Where'd Kevin go? Just say thank you for hosting us here with your entire team with Coca-Cola Bottling. I do want to turn it over to Crawford Jones, who's the president of the East Region for Coca-Cola, and Hafiz Chandawala, the EVP and Chief Administrative Officer for Coca-Cola Bottling. And just say thank you again. Y'all have engaged us in the legislature on these issues in the past. Whether it's with this, other issues that I know impact the industry and business. And we don't take lightly, I think, just the Coca-Cola brand history name as it relates to the history of Georgia going back many decades and, centuries in some cases. So I think it's fitting that we're having this meeting here today to hear your story and the impacts you're having on the trucking industry and vice versa. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Crawford.
Great, thank you. First of all, Senator and Chairman, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time and what you guys are doing on behalf of the state. My name's Crawford Jones. I'm the Vice President of most of the state of Georgia for Coca-Cola United. And let me start logistics first of all. So I think most of you have found restrooms are out the door and back this way. We've got drinks both in coolers here and around out this door. And we'll have some lunch served later on today. We will also have a tour available. It'll be a bit of a modified tour given the size of this group and the safety requirements, but that'll be available at the end of this meeting for anybody that's able to stick around, so we really look forward to that. Let me just give a few comments on Coca-Cola United so you understand who we are and then our footprint in the state of Georgia and our CDL needs. But we are a company founded in 1902. We're a private company out of Birmingham, Alabama, have about 10,000 associates, and we're fifth generation of ownership in the business. We operate in 6 states. We'll have to get a map up here in a little bit you guys can see, but we're in 6 states from Louisiana over to Georgia, Panhandle of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, a little bit of Tennessee. Oh.
Is this you guys?
That's it.
Perfect. And then just talk right in that mic.
Well, that didn't format correctly, but
Yeah,
For
that
whatever
first
reason.
one didn't come through, but the other ones. Sorry.
well, we'll have to go with that. So one of the main questions I get is what's the difference between the Coca-Cola company and a Coca-Cola bottler? And first of all, this is the simplified version, but a Coca-Cola bottler, if you're out in stores or if you see Coca-Cola branded trucks or anything, that's the Coca-Cola bottler. So the people putting drinks on shelves, ordering in the stores, all of that. The Coca-Cola company is a global company that owns the brands, and really their revenue is selling concentrate to us. So nobody in this room's really ever interacted or transacted or bought anything directly from the Coca-Cola company. That's generally the Coca-Cola bottlers. And quite frankly, if we weren't in the state of Georgia, you wouldn't interact with the Coca-Cola company much at all. You would just know the bottler in your local state and the other 49 states. And one of the interesting things I'll talk about is the history of the Coca-Cola, what a franchise is and what a bottler is. I think it's a really interesting connection point from how it started to what it is today with our CDL discussion. But 100 years ago, in 1902, 120 years ago, a Coke franchise was quite literally how far you could load a wagon, a mule-pulled wagon, and go out and return safely in daylight. So think about that. And if there were creeks without bridges, you couldn't cross those, so that was somebody else's franchise on the other side. So that's how this thing started, and there were thousands of Coke franchises in the U.S., and consolidation happened. But so we started with mule-drawn wagons, we grew up, and now here we are in Georgia talking about the issue of not having enough CDL drivers. So it's a really interesting history when you think about what the Coke business is and what it means to the state of Georgia. So specifically in Georgia, this map is accurate. This is our footprint in Georgia. These are our facilities. You can see it bleeds over into Chattanooga because that's where some of the Dalton distribution comes out of. But this is what we look like in the state of Georgia. In Georgia, we have about 3,500 associates. We have 22 facilities and a substantial number of CDL drivers, which Hafiz will cover shortly. But we cover, you see, we're up from Jasper, all of Atlanta, down to Brunswick. We are the first bottler. It's the first time in history that one bottler's had the whole state of Georgia. So we have it all, and the challenges are very different in South Georgia, in Metro Atlanta, Savannah, the port, all of that. So we have different strategies around CDL and everything that we do around recruitment, and it's different in the state, as I said, but we do acknowledge it's a problem we have to solve in Georgia, or else it'll be a longer-term problem. It's a real issue we face every day. So look, again, I want to thank you guys for being here. We appreciate the time and look forward to the discussion. In any way we can help now or in the future, please don't hesitate to ask. Hafiz will come up with a little more information for you.
Thank you, Crawford. Senator Chairman, thank you for being here today, and those online, thank you for attending. And for those in the audience, thank you for being here to help us solve or address this issue of CDL and the shortage that we see in our industry throughout the state of Georgia. So my name is Hafiz Chandwala. I work as the Chief Administrative Officer for Coca-Cola United. I've been with the company for 22 years, and I'm in Birmingham, often in Atlanta, though, as I am today, and just about every week. So really enjoy visiting here, and actually a high school graduate of Evans High School in Augusta, Georgia. So I have roots here. My dad actually worked on the Vogel plant that's now live in Augusta, Georgia. So have ties back to the state. As we talk about this issue, this driver shortage issue, I know we're all here because it's a real problem. We want to try to find solutions, and I want to talk a little bit about what we as a company are doing, and then what the broader technical college schools are doing to help us support resolving this issue, and then how we might be able to work together to do more. So we acutely felt this struggle when the pandemic hit in 2020 and 2021. We all felt the shortfall, wages increasing with the government intervention on compensation for individuals. We just really felt a shortfall, really couldn't source enough drivers at all during that period of time, and there was a significant shortfall then. It's gotten better, but it's still not an issue that is solved, and we have more work to do. So we're taking a multifaceted approach to address our needs, and one of them is a significant training investment within Coca-Cola United. We have spent $4 million in resources and individuals and training for developing our associates in Georgia, and by year end, we will have spent $5 million in 2023 just at Coke United in the state of Georgia. We've also implemented what we call the culture of learning. And what we're doing with that is we're hiring associates to train our team members to be successful members of our team and ultimately develop their careers into further opportunities. And one of the areas where we're developing careers is in the ability for folks to upskill their capabilities to become CDL drivers. So we actually have a program where we will, and Crawford touched on this, where we will pay an associate's salary during a 6-week time period to go through our internal CDL school, which we have invested in many locations. And when they finish the CDL school, they have the opportunity to take the test with the state, and they then have their CDL license. And they can then drive for us and certainly go on to other employment opportunities within our company. So it's a significant investment on our part. In addition, we worked with the technical college system and the Coca-Cola Company to make $1 million gift to the technical college system last year, and those efforts are underway to add trainers, to pave parking lots for training facilities for drivers. So all of that is ongoing as well within the Coca-Cola system. In addition to the $1 million grant by the Coca-Cola Company, we, Coca-Cola United, granted $200,000 to the technical college that's near our Tifton campus, and that is the Southern Regional Technical College, in order to increase their efforts on CDL training as well as some other school programs. Another item that we're doing is we're making an effort to connect with high school students to show them that there's a career opportunity at Coke United during their senior year and bring them in and have them work or have an opportunity to work in different departments. Now, what they can do is get started at 18 when they graduate high school and then certainly work their way into a CDL license in a few years and then certainly drive for us and have a very meaningful opportunity and career with Coke United. Lastly, I'd say that with respect to that what we find is the ability for us to have these schools and make this investment within Coke United has given us the opportunity to really train the Coca-Cola way. That's the way I'd call it. And we are able to retain those associates in a much higher rate because they've come through our training internally. So working together to develop a curriculum that works hand in hand with what's happening in the technical schools and develop our own training internally. We have associates that go to the technical schools. We have those associates that stay within our schools internally and ultimately take the state testing. Has been a really a good win and a good symbiotic relationship across the state. So really that's what I wanted to make sure I conveyed to you, that we are making investments both internally and with the technical college system throughout the state. We want to work together to help solve the issues. And lastly, I will say that Chairman, on the committee, that we want to thank you all for looking at tort reform in the last meeting. I know that's not what this meeting is about, but certainly that's an area that with the judicial climate in Georgia is important to us, and we look forward to what's coming there in 2024. So thank you all for being with us today. Look forward to taking you on a tour, looking at our facility, looking at our CDL school here, and look forward to breaking bread over lunch. So thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you. I'll first see if any of my colleagues have any questions and want to recognize Senator Islam for joining us. Do you have anything you want to share with this crowd? No, you're good? Okay, cool. Senator Jones, you good? You have a question?
I guess the only question I would have is, you talked about your CDL school. What is the difference between your school and those at the technical colleges?
Obviously, the CDL curriculum is very similar. We also blend in some of the work-specific stuff at Coca-Cola as part of our training. And we're in some discussion, and I know we've got to have a Tifton discussion, I think, with you folks about how to incorporate the TCSG schools with some of the work we're doing. So we're certainly interested in that. Right now, many of our campuses are not quite close enough to make it work, but we're certainly interested in integrating as best we can, and just a discussion about how TCSG and our internal program could work better together.
And do y'all use any independent contractors, or they're all employees?
They're all employees right now for our internal schools. And then we certainly have candidates that have CDLs that they've gotten externally, and then they come in. So certainly we go that route as well. Does that answer the question?
One thing I would add to the question of the difference in our school versus the technical college, many of our drivers, CDL drivers, also deliver and merchandise the product in store. So our merchandising standards are taught in this school as well. So that's something obviously a third-party school would not be able to teach because they're teaching CDL. So we incorporate that into our school. That's the primary, I would say, difference.
And just one other question. I know you mentioned you operate in multiple states. Are there any differences in your logistics in some of the other states versus the way you operate here in Georgia?
We've got a thing called cross-dock, which will make sense perhaps as you see out there, but generally not. They're all pretty similar, and we're doing CDL training I think in every state. Not in some of the tiny state footprints we have, but in most every major state. I would say the issue in Georgia seems a bit more acute, maybe with the population, Metro Atlanta, and the growth of the port. But operationally, it's very similar.
Thank you.
Let me ask one question. I don't know if I'll ask this the right way, but outside of, I think, the typical driver who's maybe picking up at the warehouse and going to, I'll say, Publix, dropping off a load of items or kind of what you described, are there any other supply chain mechanisms within your model outside of just warehouse to store where a CDL driver is needed in terms of kind of your statewide supply chain footprint? And that may be even just, is that the shipping of the actual product to get it here to create, this? And I know that's happening in other parts of your supply chain, but just to understand that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, we got a few. So there's the warehouse to store in a grocery store model or a small store model. It's a bit different, but warehouse to store. We've got our manufacturing centers through our sales centers or our distribution centers. So we would call that more over the road, where they don't merchandise product. They don't stop by a customer. It's all internal. We have raw materials inbound and outbound. And then we have longer haul stuff that would be from our manufacturing or from distant manufacturing where we purchase. But that's often third-party carrier. The other stuff is more, you drive during the day, you stay within our footprint, sleep in your own bed every night, and then the third-party piece is when you start to leave our footprint and go into the Midwest or Mid-Atlantic, and that's not really what we do with our internal drivers.
And is there any product, because I know this always comes up in various conversations, but is there any products that come up where it's not coming on a truck, but it's coming on a train or intersects with trucks?
On the raw material side, yes. We would bring in bulk rail car, for instance, to College Park here where we have manufacturing, or Marietta, sweetener mostly. But outside of that, almost everything else is truck carrier.
Awesome. To our senators on the screen, any questions? Senator Gooch or Dozal? You're good? Okay.
I've got one question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, speak up.
Okay, so your voice is kind of muffled, Chairman. I think it's because you're closer to the mic. The gentleman talking, I can hear him better. It comes across better, but they may have covered this earlier. But out of their truckers that are working here in Georgia, what percent drive out of the state versus what percent of those CDL required drivers are basically in the state day to day? Is there a rule of thumb for their particular company?
I'm not sure about a rule of thumb. I mean, I could estimate. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as Hafiz said, since much of our trucking is from manufacturing to DCs, which we have a lot in Georgia, or from distribution centers to store, 90 or 95% stays in state. The exception largely would be where we have manufacturing in Atlanta that goes into Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, or where we've got what's called cross dock out of Tifton in particular that goes down into Florida and southeast Alabama. But yeah, large majority of it stays in state.
Well, thank you. I don't think we have any other further questions, and thanks for, again, having us and giving us an overview of your model. Next, we're going to hear from Commissioner Spencer Moore from the Georgia Department of Driver Services.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Should be the updated one.
Perfect.
And just make sure you speak in the mic so it centers.
All right. Good morning, and again, thank you for allowing DDS to come down and give some remarks relative to our efforts in CDL capacity. I've had the opportunity to speak with Leader Gooch on these topics and others in many settings. And the first part of what I'd like to do this morning is just say thank you to the General Assembly because over the last several years, there have been considerable investment in DDS in order to increase the number of not only staff, but centers that we have available for CDL testing. Our role is testing, as well as regulation as it pertains to driver training schools. So during the slide presentation, I'll certainly give some remarks relative to what we're doing in this space, where we have been over the last several years, and where we intend for us to continue to move forward. First off, I'd like to just give a little update about the agency and what we're doing. To date, we have served right at 1.635 million people face-to-face during the calendar year 23, January through August, at an average wait time of 6 minutes and 45 seconds. So from a day-to-day perspective of DDS, we're doing pretty good as far as getting people through our centers, which is a very busy place. 99.85% of our customers across the state of Georgia are Real ID compliant, which leads the country. When I look at this slide, or when I present this slide, typically what I'm trying to show is we have 67 locations around the state, so a pretty complex part of our business of roughly 900 employees that are currently staffed, and most of them work out of those 67 locations, and then the others are in our Conyers headquarters. We do have 10 CDL test sites around the state. They are not, they encompass the entire state. I would say areas of the state where we have the least is in South Georgia, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in order to improve that, and the investments, again, the General Assembly has assisted us in trying to improve that. Certainly thank Governor Kemp and his support, OPB, for, again, an investment that exceeds probably $10 million over the last 3 budget cycles in order to improve the number of locations where we test, as well as the staff who are available to do the testing. We do have 6 of those 10 sites that operate 5 days a week. That is Tuesday through Saturday, half day on Saturday. Those locations are Gainesville, Dalton, Cumming, between Albany and Brunswick. 3 open on 4 days a week. Rome, Thompson, and Milledgeville, and one that's open only 2 days in Jackson, but we hope to change that very soon with the increase or transition of that location from Jackson down to Forsyth. I should say the reasons why these locations operate on different days with different schedules is based on the amount of staff that's available for the allocated staff that's been provided to those centers. So that's why they operate on those specific days. In Forsyth, we will replace that location. We're currently co-located at a TSG campus. Down in Jackson, they have been great as far as a partner. We were at a private site that was needed in order to expand a local private business. So we had to move from that campus where we operated a 4-day-a-week center over to TCSG. And we've been operating, sharing a pad. They use the pad for training. We use it for testing those 2 days. Again, in November, we will become fully operational in Forsyth. That will then become a 5-day operating center versus a 2-day in that particular area. We are also happy to announce, and certainly this is something that, again, had support through the General Assembly, the opening of Douglasville in June of 2024, Hazelhurst of August of 2024. Not sure why Oconee is listed. It's not a CDL site, but we are expanding our site in Rome, which would be an increase in the number of test slots that we'll have available. Those investments, just so that you guys are aware, Forsyth, that was it's an amortized lease of $3.357 million. Douglasville is an investment of $4,825,000. Hazelhurst is an investment of $2,400,000. And the enhancements in Rome is an investment of $3,650,000. Certainly also, one of the goals of DDS has been over the last many years is to increase the number of CDL holders in the state. I happen to be first vice chair of the ANVA International Board. This is something that is being that's a part of the entire country. I don't think what's happening in Georgia is different than what's happening around the country. And in my role as ANVA, as first vice chair, I had an opportunity just last week to be out of state and speak with some of the industry leaders about the situations as it relates to the driver, obviously. One of the things that we look at DDS is how many drivers do we have. In many cases, how long they continue to be drivers, because we know in this industry, if they don't have a situation like the gentleman from Coca-Cola described, where they are at home and running over the day and then coming back at home at night, that becomes a very strenuous, tenuous, and stressful work situation, and many of those folks leave the industry. But to date, and this is an increase of roughly 10,000 over at the height of the pandemic, where I'll discuss in just a few minutes a supply chain study and meeting that was held by Governor Kemp and what's been done by the department, especially since that time. But we have roughly 400,000 CDL holders in the state of Georgia. 13,000 of those are CLPs, so those are permits, and it will, if these folks complete the portions of their test, can transition over to becoming full licensed drivers. To date, we have skills tests conducted by DDS, roughly 20,000. Remember, this is a 2-hour test, has 3 components: vehicle inspection, basic control, as well as the actual on-the-road test. So We work in cooperation with third-party testers or providers. Those are the private folks who work in the industry in order to help a number of these folks also get tests. I'll speak to the numbers, and you see them there actually on this slide. The average age of the CDL driver in Georgia is 52.6 years of age. That's something that, as we were looking at the data, found to be very interesting. At our location currently, we have 71 licensed testers. These are examiners who are able to give the test. Third-party providers have roughly 96. And the total, the third-party testers is 96. The third-party examiners is 186. And the CDL training schools regulated. This shows 20, but we had a new one added just in July of this year. So we now have 21 training schools that are regulated by the department. Back in 2021, Governor Deal called together a group of government officials as well as private sector folks to look at this very issue that we're talking about, CDL driver shortages. Obviously, in the height of the pandemic, from that executive order, he asked the DDS to help put together a task force as well as a report to talk about how we can do more in order to combat the driver shortage. Since that time, we have established a CDL task force. Within our agency, we've worked with a contracted epidemiologist who was able to pinpoint and help to look at some of the data issues and specifically where we could pinpoint and work toward improvement. And of course, we've collaborated with a number of state partners as well as private sector partners that are not listed here. And I'll talk about some of the things that have come out of that task force. We did put together a response to the executive order that I believe has been provided to the committee in reference to areas in which DDS specifically could work in order to try and improve the number of drivers in the state. So there are roughly 4 things that the agency has been focused primarily on. First is increased efficiency in administering CDL knowledge and road skills tests by reducing applicant wait times. We've enforced what we call a hotbed. This is a very interesting term from the standpoint of each test takes around 2 hours. But we know the last 30 minutes, 45 minutes of that test is on the road. So rather than waiting for a full 2-hour slot before we bring a new driver onto the range in order to be tested, we bring that driver out at roughly an hour and a half, 45 minutes, 30 minutes to 45 minutes before the other test, or as soon as that other driver leaves that carousel. This is increased capacity for us. This is also contingent upon staff members as well, though. And we're no different than any other location in that workforce shortage. This is certainly something that the agency has seen. Through this effort, though, this was during the pandemic, specifically in coming out of the pandemic, reduced appointment wait times from 8 weeks to less than 2 weeks. So that's an individual being able to go and get a slot in order to be tested within roughly a 2-week period. Again, we have to date 71 CDL examiners across those 10 sites. If we were fully staffed, it would be roughly 108. So we're down. The difference between those two, when we bring on Douglasville as well as Hazelhurst, that number will increase to 127, I believe, 127 examiners, licensed examiners, in order to affect the number of tests that we give. So that will be a tremendous increase once those 2 sites are up and running. We've also had a concerted effort in order to increase the use of the third-party testers for the CDL road test. In other words, through a private public partnership, we are encouraging the number of third-party testers to take on the responsibility and be a part of the solution as far as testing these drivers. We've reduced the fleet size for qualification for third-party testing from 25. In other words, prior to the implementation of the executive order response, you had to have a fleet of 25 vehicles in order to qualify to be a third-party tester. We've since reduced that down to only having to have 2 trucks in order to qualify to be a tester. We've reviewed CDL schools eligible to apply to become third-party testers, and we're certainly targeting support for low-performing third-party test sites, meaning that those sites that are only testing just a few drivers, we're trying to do everything that we can to enhance the number of drivers that they test. Our expansion, this is what we project, and of course this does not bring into account a very good portion of what we've done over the last several years as well. So from 2022, monthly, roughly 1,000 test slots. We've seen that increase to roughly 1,500 this year. And when we bring on those new sites next year, we expect that to increase to roughly 2,384 test slots. Also, not shown in this is the fact that we have David Barrett here. David is the leader of our CDL travel team. They are sort of an off-the-books program, and they don't fit into this slots, so they can do roughly 200 slots tests per month. This is a 4-person team that go to locations where there might be backlogs in a particular area, and they're able to work directly with the schools and enhance the number of test slots and actually test them at their location versus having to come to one of our locations. So this is, again, a new strategy that we put in over the last 2 to 3 years. Certainly happy with David and that team and what they do in order to provide these services to the state. We've also modified our program used to reinstate lifetime CDL disqualifications. In the past, a lifetime CDL disqualification was just that, a lifetime. So a person who potentially had committed a felony in their 20s was then prevented from being able to, at 40 plus, perhaps get an opportunity to be a CDL driver. We've reduced that wait time from lifetime to 10 years. So in order for us to enhance the number of people that could potentially come into this industry, we've given considerable opportunity to a new group of drivers who perhaps thought they didn't qualify in prior years. And certainly our last strategy, one of our last strategies, and we've done a few more things than this slide deck actually portrays, but these are the bigger things that the department has been working on. Improving applicants' access to credible resources to help them prepare. Typically, during late summers, I often get a call from a superintendent's office, many times the superintendent themselves, about the ability for them to get bus drivers. And that's certainly something we have been trying to work with those schools in order to enhance, along with many other types of drivers. But one of the things that was asked for is, one of the toughest part of the test is vehicle inspection. This is going around that vehicle and being able to identify things that ultimately might go wrong with that vehicle in order to keep it safe. as you know, CDL crashes now have become really, really a highly looked at from the media standpoint occurrence. There was a crash that occurred up in the Northeast where a CDL driver happened to be involved in a crash that killed 7 motorcyclists. As a result of that, I had to, on behalf of Georgia, respond to the NTSB about what we are doing in the area of safety as it relates to the commercial driver. So there is a lot of regulation from the federal side as it relates to this program. But again, one of the things that was requested of us is what can we provide better in order to give those drivers who are hoping to get in this industry resource materials, learning materials, and help them to be better. And one of the things that we did was we've had 2 town hall meetings, November 14th of 2022, July 17th of 2023. We held both of those down in Central Georgia Technical College in Macon. We've had 262 combined attendees from the federal government, from those third-party testers and examiners, CDL schools around the state, boards of education, technical colleges, city governments, as well as large companies. What have we done since that? We've created a commercial, we've enhanced our study guide for these drivers, as well as we have also created 2 videos. One is called Meet the Truck, the other is called Meet the Bus, and they're very good hands-on curriculum that allows for those persons who are hoping to become CDL drivers to essentially look at the video and become more familiarized with parts of the truck. Again, the vehicle inspection is a tough part of the test that we see many of those drivers failing at. And as those occur, what we have seen is entry-level driver training has also enhanced the number of people who are passing those tests from the first since it's been fully incorporated. So again, the department is very focused on this area. We continue to hope to be focused on it, and certainly welcome partnership with the local technical colleges as well as with private industry in order to enhance the number of drivers that we have in our state. Mr. Chairman, that's the end of the slide deck, but certainly here to answer any questions that you or the committee might have.
See if we can do this without feedback. This mic has a little bit of feedback. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Islam. I think she had a couple questions, and then Senator Jones, and we'll check the computer.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Commissioner, thank you for your comments today. I just had a couple of questions. So I heard you say that the DDS regulate the training schools, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So if someone wanted to create a training school, they would have to come to your department?
If they wanted to create a training school for CDL, yes, they would have to come through our agency.
Okay. What is roughly like the timeline of how long it takes for that application to be processed for a training school to be established?
And of course, I did get comments from the last or previous
Sure.
meeting. And, you know, in fairness to the person that was here and expressed their concern about the time that it took, that one took way too long.
Mm-hmm.
We added 2 new schools in fiscal year 22. We added 4, I believe, or 5 in 2022, and then we added 4 more in 2023. The average time typically for that individual to go through the process of submitting all their paperwork, getting one of our folks to go out and do the inspection. Again, this is done by CDL analysts. We were recently awarded 2 more of these folks in this past legislative session. That's a team of roughly 8 people for the entire state. And we recently have them all hired, except for one. But it will take roughly 6 months
Okay.
if you had all of those people who were available.
Okay. And these work shortages that are affecting everyone,
Sure.
are they affecting your department's ability to process these applications?
They are. They are. The starting salary of a CDL exam analyst is right at $39,000. The starting salary of an entry-level driver examiner who does not have to test trucks is right at $32,000. So we're asking these folks as analysts not just to be, fully aware of how to issue that particular license, but do the inspections that are required in order to become a third-party provider, which often is a more complex job. So that's what the
Sure.
average salary is.
Okay, it sounds like there's a domino effect, right? So if you guys don't have the workforce in order to process applications, then there's going to be a holdup on establishing these training schools, and then it just keeps going. So what do you think would solve, how do you think it would, what I'm trying to ask is, what's a solution or solutions that you think would enhance your department's ability to hire more workers?
Salary.
Okay.
Salary would certainly assist more of those CDL analysts. Again, we were awarded 2 additional ones this past legislative session. But when you think about, and we just hired, one of those 2 additional ones, but roughly, if we have 6, and we've had 6 since I've been at DDS, and that's been since 2012, you're going to have at least 2 that's going to be missing at
Sure.
a portion of the year,
Mhm.
and they have to cover the entire state.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Commissioner Spencer, thank you for the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to, one thing that I noticed, you said the average age of a driver is about 52 years old.
When we looked through the database, we thought it would be a little bit older, quite frankly, based on, just our meetings, our CDL town halls, the folks that were coming out. But yeah, it's 52 years of age.
So why aren't younger people being attracted to the industry?
I think a part of what's been expressed already today is we probably don't do enough education about how great of a workforce this can be for a young person. So with more marketing to those groups, perhaps this is an area that we can improve.
Everyone is concerned about drivers that's been on the road for an extended period of time.
Yes, sir.
I know you all have truck stops, but how do you deal with continuing education and other issues that drivers may have in making sure that the roads are safe?
Well, beyond the required medical certificate that's provided to us every 2 years, is that correct, David? There really isn't a remedial training for the CDL driver community. The only thing, once you're licensed as a CDL holder, at that point, you just need to ensure that you have the medical ability to maintain that license. There's no additional testing beyond the initial testing.
You think that would
Is that
be?
right?
The only one that requires extra testing is hazmat.
Sorry, with the exception of the hazmat, the hazardous material driver, those persons, they require additional testing.
That's probably federal, correct?
Is
Or
that a
is it
federal?
state?
I believe this federal is once every 5 years for us.
Federal requirement once every 5 years.
Do you think having additional remedial training would assuage some of the fears that the public may have about drivers being on the road?
And I would consider myself a highway safety professional, considering I spent 15 years with the Governor's Office for Highway Safety before coming over to driver services. We just don't see these these drivers being overrepresented in the number of serious crashes. Obviously, the fatality rate could go up because of the size and weight of the vehicle itself, but they just aren't overrepresented. So do we provide any additional training, if you will, for those who may have been in some other field? I just don't see it bear out right now, Senator, in the data that these folks are overrepresented. Certainly, again, the impact of a crash they may cause could be more serious, but they're involved probably in fewer crashes than a regular non-commercial vehicle.
And since you're talking to a bunch of legislators, what reforms do you think we need to make in the General Assembly to help this particular industry?
We're from the testing and training and regulation side. One of the things that we've done within our agency, again, to look at, rule, which is how we were able to get from the lifetime disqualification down to the 10-year period. We are listening to every single individual who comes to us and makes a request as far as a rule change. We have, one of the things I advocated at the very first supply chain meeting with Governor Kemp is the fact that you have intrastate drivers who can make a delivery of, say, a flooring delivery in Dalton down to Brunswick, but they can't drive right across the border up into Chattanooga. But that's a federal law change versus a state one. So many of these changes are probably not just at the state level. There will have to be some federal changes as well. And I know this is an area in which, again, Governor Kemp and his team have been advocating up in Washington.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Dozal, do you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, just next to you, but I think Senator Jones essentially just asked the same question, so I'll waive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I do have a couple questions, and I'm trying to be mindful of time. So I do think, it sounds like as we kind of produce a report, there probably are recommendations we should include in terms of the impact we do need to have on federal policy, because I think we heard in our last meeting a lot of concerns from the industry just in terms of, I think, new federal regs that are just kind of being shoved down some of these companies' throats that are just creating greater workforce challenges, and then they're trickling down to your agency to have to manage through those. Secondly, can you talk a little bit more just in terms of the short-term and long-term vision of your agency, Commissioner, with the partnership with TCSG? Because I know historically in the past, at least my thought or vision, just based on experience out in our neck of the woods, I know we have our CDL sites, in our colleges, but how do we maximize the opportunity to where, if I'm one of these companies that's, 2 to 25 or whatever the number is, and I need to get a driver, get their CDL done, is there an efficiency to resources to where that company can basically go to the technical college and maximize the opportunity? This is before your time, so this is not an issue I have with anything your agency has done now, but many years ago, where, in Dallas, we have a technical college, and then literally like 100 yards away, there's a DDS office, and honestly, just in terms of efficiencies, it just seems a little silly. But I'm just thinking long term in terms of maximizing the spider web network across the state to fill either gaps or help companies thrive. What's kind of the strategies or visions to kind of blend funds to maximize opportunity?
First of all, we've enjoyed a really great relationship with the technical colleges, and we work literally. Brent is working with their counterpart, Brent Bennett, is the head of the regulatory compliance at DDS, and Shavonda Leslie, of course, is head of governmental affairs and communications. And, you know, Commissioner Dozier, obviously, who is a former commissioner of driver services, he and I started state government nearly the same time in the same agency 27 or so years ago. So the cooperation is there. We're working very hard. This is the way that I look at the question that you ask is there is a distinct difference in what we do and what the technical colleges do. We test, they train. So they are really good at getting the training right for these drivers to come in and then be tested safe to ensure that they're safely able to operate on the roads. But those are two different things. They do take, you know, one of the great benefits of what's coming is a modernized CDL carousel, which would reduce the size and footprints of what it takes us $1 million just to put the pad down for them to test on and of course for them to train on. But that footprint has been reduced, so that's one of the things that has come out of the shortages over the last several years that I know FMCSA is working with states in order to incorporate. With the very first modernized test site that DDS will be down in Forsyth this fall. So again, we were able to put that one down with a little bit less cost. But again, we're testing, they're training. We will continue to collaborate. The private sector providers who are providing some of the training, again, that's an area that has to be regulated for safety reasons. The last thing that we ever want, and this is something that unfortunately we have had to do over the years, is selling a CDL or being compensated for a CDL is something that we want to prevent. And that's the other reason why salary is so important, because literally I am challenged daily with the fact that our examiners are often looked at, hey, can you sure I missed that one? Can I give you some compensation in order to get this license? That's a real issue that we all face. But again, we're on the testing side, they're on the training side. We think that there's a difference. We know that the cost may be a little bit higher based on us both having to put pads down. But again, the great partnership that we have just down in Jackson shows they're testing, they're training 2 days a week on the same pad. We're testing 2 days a week on that pad.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I'll have, I think I'll play a little contrary, and I work in healthcare, but if I have an individual who walks into the emergency room and you want to get them to a better place, but the person walks in and says, hey, I don't have a car and I don't have childcare and I can't figure out how, that next step, it kind of goes to what I think Senator Jones was mentioning, is that if you co-locate facilities, number one, when you come to appropriators and you say, hey, I want to do, A through Z, well, if you're co-locating just from a capital perspective, I would think we're raising the amount of money. Also, we can do more, I think, across the state. So all I'm saying is I think from a co-location perspective, I think there's greater efficiencies than having, I hate to use the Dallas example, but I'm going to use the Dallas example because I think it was, a little silly. But I also think from a continuing ed perspective, as we're seeing the changes, I think right now in the industry where we have a number of, truck drivers that are wanting to go drive Amazon vans or they want to do other things because of the quality of life. If they are going to make that change, then I think that's an enrollment opportunity, I think, for the technical college system for them to do, maybe something else. So I hear you, and I agree that they're separate, but I also think, too, there's ways that if we can integrate some of these programs with more efficiency in state government, I think it's going to create a bigger, I'm not saying go take here and go spend over here, but I think re-looking at the entire model in terms of impacting, especially when we talk about inner city needs.
Yes, sir.
Rural needs. And then my last comment, because I know we're way over time, and I want to get to the other two senators have one more follow-up question. I know you did some public meetings in Middle Georgia to get community feedback and from stakeholders. Is there an opportunity down the road to maybe do that in Atlanta or do it in Fulton or DeKalb County?
Certainly,
Just because I know between the
yeah.
logistics hub of what I think Senator Jones is probably experiencing in his own district, in particular, I think is.
We are glad to do it in those communities. We do it at Central Georgia Tech because it's central to the state. We do have a lot of individuals that come down from Atlanta to be a part of those discussions. So, but we are certainly willing to do them here. Yes, sir.
Hey, Commissioner, just one follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Question came up about technology and the use of technology in these automobiles and being these big rigs, if you will. And I asked the question because, Interstate 75 is in my backyard, and there was a horrific accident about 4 years
Yes,
ago,
sir.
and this driver was accused of watching television while he was driving. How do you incorporate those kind of measures into your training facilities?
It's something that we've incorporated from the non-commercial side as well. As vehicles become more enhanced, the question becomes, is the driver efficiently knowledgeable to navigate it? And one of the things that we try to work through this, and this is a part of a national study with AMVA as well, where we're trying to ensure that we don't, at one point, and this is to make my point really quickly, is at one point we had our examiners tape a piece of paper on the navigation so that a person couldn't see that backup steering right, and they could turn over their shoulder and actually do it themselves. But as an industry, we started to recognize that, okay, these cars are going to get more sophisticated. So we don't allow the self-parallel parking opportunity that many of the cars have. And I'm saying this from a non-commercial side because I think we're experiencing that now, which it'll happen with the commercial trucks as well. But we have to figure out how to integrate good testing within that increased technology space and ensure that these drivers, again, are educated and trained in order to be safe drivers. We just have to figure out how to integrate the two. It's tough.
I have a quick question, and we'll let you go. My question was, you mentioned earlier, what was the average age of a commercial driver license?
52 in our state.
52, okay. And demographics, so like male versus women versus men?
It was, if I remember the statistics, it was more than 80% male.
Okay. So it sounds like we have a potential untapped labor market
Agreed.
because 50% of the workforce are women.
And we'll get the specific. We do have that demographic. I don't have it here with me, but I'll get that specific breakout of male versus female back to the committee.
Okay, no, that's good to know. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
So, Commissioner, I'm just going to say, and I know we're way over time, it's my fault, but I do want to thank you, your team, for all the information. This presentation was great. Just the transparency, the data, we appreciate you. So we appreciate, you just kind of sitting on the hot seat for a minute. But, the collaboration is important. And
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for helping solving the problems between what you've done and also the governor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're not perfect by any stretch, but certainly I think General Assembly should know if there's an issue at DDS, I'm the first person that wants to resolve it. Thank you.
Yeah, y'all are responsive. Thanks, man. I'm going to get us back on time. We'll make it up in the end. Justina Brown, Be Proud, Georgia. You're up next. And then we will shoot to have our next panel up at 11:25. Welcome.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you, Chairman. Morning, Senators. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Justina Brown. I'm with Be Proud, Georgia. Gonna direct this. All right. When Anna invited me to speak, and she told me the topic, I told her, we could speak about this for a couple of hours, but I don't have that time anymore. I will take about 10 minutes and just focus on our program. I believe it's safe to assume that every single person in this room is interested in workforce, and that is our passion as Be Pro, Be Proud. One question that we may ask as workforce advocates is, where would we be without our skilled workforce, our technicians, our healthcare workers, our truck drivers? And that's who we believe are the unsung heroes of our community, but unfortunately, that is not the perception of everyone. And so, Be Pro, Be Proud, our goal is to change the perception and to make sure that emphasis is given to those unsung heroes who we call our truck drivers, all of our skilled professions. And so we take a mobile workshop across the state of Georgia. Here's a picture of it. And it's a 40-foot trailer. Inside of the trailer, we have gamified stations, we have simulators, and students get to have hands-on experience to various skilled professions. And commercial truck driving is one of the stations that we have inside of this mobile workshop, and the students love it. There are many students who come aboard and they say, wow, I didn't know that various skills were needed, or different things that you had to look out for in order to clear something while you're driving a truck. And so we're excited that we can get them interested in truck driving as a career. Be Pro, Be Proud is a movement that started in Arkansas, and in 2020, Misty Martin with Cherokee Office of Economic Development brought this program to Georgia. And our mission is simple, but it's powerful, and then we're trying to connect job seekers, specifically young students, to career opportunities and training opportunities within skilled trades. And so all of that is because we understand that there is a stigma attached to skilled professions. We understand that there is a shortage in the labor, and we also understand that there's a skills gap. So we're extremely focused on building the workforce of tomorrow, and that's what we do with our mobile workshop. Now, once the students come aboard our mobile workshop, what we do is we talk to them about the 15 professions that you'll see here. We let them know that these 15 professions are high growth, high demand. They're expected to have 10% or more growth potential and income. And so we tell them what those numbers are. And you'd be surprised how quickly you can grab a child's attention when you start talking dollars. All of a sudden, everyone's a math whiz. And so we tell them what they can make, how much money they can make. The professions that you see with red stars, I know it's slightly small, but the ones with red stars are the ones where we do have simulators inside of our mobile workshop. And so after they go through our website, figure out how much money they can possibly make in all of these skilled trades, commercial truck driving, yes, being one of them, then we turn them loose at those stations. All right. At the core of Be Pro, Be Proud lies our dedication to transforming the way that professions are viewed. Our focus encompasses parents, it encompasses industry leaders like yourselves, it encompasses community stakeholders, but our focus is on the middle and high school students. Those are the ones who we recognize are our future workforce. They're our future truck drivers. And this is information that we have from our impact during the last school year. We were able to get in front of nearly 19,000 students, and that's across the state of Georgia. One of the things that you'll see on this slide is something called Join the Movement. So over half of those students signed up to take a survey and let us know what their careers of interest were and their plans after graduation were. And so we use that information in order to provide them with resources give them information about local training opportunities, either at a technical college near them or an employment opportunity in their area, depending on the information that they give us during their Join the Movement survey. And so on the right side of this slide, you'll see from last year's surveys with Join the Movement, the top professions of interest for students. Commercial truck driving did not make the list, but that's a number that we're trying to change. And everyone in this room is working on that effort, I know. On the bottom, you see what we've found during the last school year to be student plans after graduation. And I'm sure none of these numbers are surprising. We hear all the time that students immediately say, after high school, I'm going to a four-year university. And so 50% of the students did in the Join the Movement survey, that's what they told us. There was a 27% who said that they weren't sure. Those are the students who we send information about all of the opportunities that are available for them. And then there, 12% said they were interested in technical college, and 11% said they want to go straight to work. So with those students, we send them all the opportunities within their region, as well as apprenticeships that are available for them. Something else that we have on our website is a feature called Find Training and Find Jobs, because we want those students who join the movement or others to be able to come on the website, enter their zip code, figure out where they can get trained in commercial truck driving or where they can find employment in commercial truck driving or other skilled trades. So I didn't add the QR code, and I wish I had, but I invite anyone who has a training program to add your training program to our website, anyone who has a job opportunity to do that as well. Something that we have coming up with our program is a new mobile workshop. Because of all of the booking requests that we've received, we're not able to get to all of the schools and students that we'd like to across the state of Georgia. And so with this mobile workshop, it'll be bigger. We'll have space for more simulators, more stations, and that's going to be coming out in the spring. So it's being manufactured right now. We're getting with partners right now, and we're trying to fill up all of the stations that we want to represent skilled trades on that unit. And as you'll see in this picture, commercial truck driving will be represented. We will have an L3 Harris simulator, and we've decided that was one of the first ones, because we've heard from other states that have the 18-wheeler, because we didn't have it yet, that's the one that students love. And so this gives them a realistic, hands-on experience of what it's like to sit inside of an 18-wheeler and to have those 3 screens around them to be able to actually get more of a real-life experience. There are other stations represented on the screen. I promised to be brief. I was. If you have any questions, I can take them.
Thank you, and Misty's awesome.
Yes, she's awesome.
So that's pretty cool. Questions, thoughts?
So, thank you for educating our youth about different opportunities of where they can work. What do you know? How many other programs such as yours there are? How many there are operating in Georgia?
Within Georgia, we hold the license for Be Pro, Be Proud. So there's only one Be Pro, Be Proud within Georgia,
Okay.
and we'll have the 2 mobile workshops. Across states, there's one in Arkansas, one in South Carolina,
Sure.
one in Tennessee, launching next week.
Okay, great. And then another question I had was, the commissioner earlier mentioned how the average age of someone that has a CDL is 52, and so we have an opportunity to get more younger people into
Absolutely.
wanting to get into commercial truck driving. So I noticed it was number 11 on the list. Do you know why that it isn't higher?
Kids, a lot of the skilled trades that we present to them, they're not opportunities that they think of.
Mhm.
They may know someone in their family who is driving, but it's a much older person. It's not someone who started out right after high school,
okay.
who went straight into that
Sure.
into that profession. And so we're letting them know, you can go right down the street, go to your technical college, get your CDL, and start driving right after high school. And this is how much money you can make.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Awesome. Senator Dizdal, do you have any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm good.
All right, awesome. Justina, thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon. Stephen Ferguson, you're up next, CIO of TCSG.
That's it. Perfect. And just that to go next. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Senators and Chairman, for having us and letting us present. Good to see and see all the activity ahead of us here. Lots of things are collaborative, and it'll be evident as we talk through here, I think is evident as DDS spoke as well, the collaborative work that Georgia is doing to solve this problem, because it's not a TCSG problem, it's not a DDS problem, it's not a Koch problem, it's all of our challenge, right? And we're working hard to solve that. I want to take some time to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing to build Georgia's CDL workforce pipeline. It is a pipeline that's needed. There's just as many that are retiring as there are coming into the job. Actually, there's more in some cases that are exiting that are coming in, and that's why we're here today. Let's get started. I want to talk to you a little bit about demand, and let's start talking about what is the quantity of jobs, or what are the quantity of jobs here in Georgia? What is the demand overall? And then how are we working to address that? In 2023, to date, there's almost 92,000 jobs for CDL drivers at Georgia-based companies. That doesn't mean there's not more jobs here. There's a lot of companies that are not based in Georgia that are also hiring some of that 401,000 licensed drivers. But there's 92,000, according to Burning Glass, MC, now Lightcast, if you follow any of those data analytics. There's 92,000 jobs there. That is outpacing the national average by roughly 20% for any state region of this size. What does that look like? And we're higher than the national average. Wanted to give you some numbers there, just kind of on a graph to see what that growth has done. Because that bottom line, that blue line, that dashed line there, that is looking at a projection and projected growth. But as you see, not only is Georgia a much larger employer of, or companies in Georgia, a much larger employer of CDL drivers, we're projected to widen that gap in the years to come. That's because of the ports, the inland ports, the business and industry that's here. There is a much higher demand for moving products and goods across this state than any other state our size. Again, going back to the posting demand, we talked about there's 92,000 jobs, but every month there's 2,200 jobs hitting the boards, hitting Indeed, hitting Monster, hitting whatever job board you look at. There's 2,200 new jobs, and those are all unique, and that's outpacing any of the other states as well of our size. What that means is there is some turnover, but there's a lot of growth and expansion. As you can tell from the previous graph, we're projected to hit well over 100,000 jobs within just 2 years, and it's going to keep growing from there. Looking back at some of the data, there's 17,000, almost 18,000 unique job postings just this year. But what's really telling here is there's 1,670 different Georgia employers competing for those CDL drivers. Now, what that tells us as an educator is we are working to serve almost one company per graduate we have coming out of the technical college system. We've got to keep ramping that up if we're going to meet the needs of every single one of these. The average job duration for a posting is up to over 33 days. If you're trying to move products and services, I know our friends at Koch talked earlier, our friends from DDS spoke earlier. If you're posting jobs and you need somebody right now, and you got to think about getting them a month later and then on board and going through the process, that's a long time to wait. So how are we working together to do that? Right now we have 37 different training sites out across Georgia. through the help of legislature, through Coke bottling their donation, we've been able to expand that. We've been able to retrofit many of these sites. We've also got more sites on the way. There's 7 planned or in progress. Now, all those planned sites, that does not mean they've been funded, but they're planned. They've got documents, they've got drawings, they are ready. They're shovel-ready type projects. But several of those are also in progress and being built in communities right now. We spoke just a little bit ago, Senator Jones, about the one that broke ground 3 weeks ago, very recent, 2-3 weeks ago, just in his district. We've got one out in Waco that's nearing completion. Now, I say nearing, I don't know what that distance looks like. We'll just do this and count it good, but it's coming along. But there's more and more of them that are popping up all over because there's demand all over the state. We talk about 1,690 different employers. They're everywhere. It's not a North Georgia problem, a South Georgia problem. They are everywhere, and there's demand. We pride ourselves. We're 22 colleges with 88 campuses. If you look at that number right there, roughly half of those campuses are going to have a CDL training site on them. More than 30 miles around the state. We can get the workforce out there. We just got to get them in the door, get them enrolled, and then get them on the road. What does enrollment look like? Since 2021, CDL demand has grown. We saw that through the numbers for job postings. The enrollment has also followed. There's 2 different types of enrollment within TCSG. There's credit enrollment. That's the tech ed programs you think about. Those are you sign up and you're going to college. You're getting a technical certificate of credit. We also have non-credit enrollment. That's our customized contract training, working with business and industry, employers like Coca-Cola bottling to customize programs. Sometimes these are retraining programs. Could be someone's been out of the market for years and needs a refresher course. But in other cases, not in this number because this is actually trained CDL drivers. We're doing a lot of testing as well, so we're helping out meeting that testing need. Overall, if you look from 22 to 23, we grew by 24% on the credit side, roughly even on the non-credit side, but we had over 2,900 graduates, CDL drivers, turned out and put into the workforce pipeline just this year, just this past year that just ended in the summer. So we're working hard to expand that, and the way we're getting there, this program is Hope Career Grant eligible. It is a high demand career. Meaning, if you want to be a CDL driver in Georgia and you qualify for Hope Grant, there's different types of qualifications. You qualify for Hope Grant, there's a few things you got to meet there. High school graduate, almost 100% of the tuition and fees is paid for. In part because Hope Career Grant for CDL drivers has an additional add-on to it. As of this last legislative session, TCSG and GSFC were approved to award $1,100 on top of Hope Grant to CDL program enrollees. That extra $1,100 covers all but just a tiny little fraction, a few dollars. The average student pays around $2,000 to $2,100 within TCSG for a credit-based enrollment. And with Hope and Hope Career Grant, there's $2,000 in state funding available to them. So there's a little bitty bit going to cover some drug testing or something, maybe an exam that's going to be out of pocket for that student. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the $1 million from Coca-Cola to expand the program. That was critical last year when they came to us and asked, how do we get more capacity? It's faculty. You heard earlier, you look at the salaries needed to cover those that are doing exams and analyzing those third-party test providers. Same thing on TCSG side. One of the hardest things to do is get people on the job and secure that funding to make sure you can grow a program, especially when you're starting up something at a new facility. And you've got a brand new pad, so getting that faculty on board, and that's what we used a lot of those dollars for and that donation from Coca-Cola was to expand our capacity through some equipment purchases, but funding that first year of faculty. I believe, and presidents are here and they'll be up next, I believe every single one of those faculty members that was funded is still on board with us. There might have been some turnover, but I hope they're still on board with us and continuing to put their training and skill set in the fight in creating and expanding this pipeline. We also had GEARS funds last year. The Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. those funds came to us at a critical time when we were looking to expand CDL, but we were looking to expand the footprint. We're able to use and leverage those GEARS funds to resurface facilities, to actually build training pads. In some cases, we had training happening, and that was in a parking lot of one of our technical colleges, so to actually get a full-scale pad and facility there. That helps you grow and expand the number of seats you have available to those students. But we also used it to buy and modernize some of our fleet of trucks. During this time, we've also expanded into an automatic transmission training program. So it's a shorter term program. There's a different licensure for that. But those trucks, obviously, are a little bit different than the manuals. Those trucks are some of what we were able to pick up in an effort that came out of the GEARS funding. A couple of the things, we talked about that 24% enrollment growth from 22 to 23, but another big component here is the placement and job placement. Students, parents, influencers, whether that be a counselor or a wife or someone else, a mentor in someone's life, they want to know that if you go invest some time, CDL, that can be an 8-week training program, if you go invest some time, that there's a job waiting on the other end of it. We all do, right? If you're going to go do a training class, you're going to do something, there has to be something in it for you. Proud to say that this past year, we just finalized the data yesterday, that it's actually 95.4% of all of our CDL graduates are working in field. Now, some of them are probably working in some related fields too. They may be working in logistics and other things, but 95%, that is roughly 5-6 percentage points more than the average for all of our students. Now, 99.4% of all those CDL graduates are working, or at least working in a capacity where we can track them and see that. That's UI data, that's surveys from the colleges. There's sometimes you got a few students who fall off the radar or may have graduated, went into the military. There could be a lot of things that take them off the radar. But of those that we can track, 99.4% are working and 95.4% are working in field. We're proud of those numbers because that means the work we're doing is directly feeding into the workforce. One thing that came up earlier when you were speaking with DDS, and we talked about a little bit of those challenges of getting people, and I'll take questions here in a second, but those challenges of getting people to do this job. And one of the biggest challenges we have here within the state is going to be keeping up with that salary demand. We got truck drivers and truck driving instructors who are being picked up by business and industry, because if you can go drive a truck, for business industry and be home overnight, you can go drive the Amazon trucks. There's a lot more jobs than just that over-the-road long-haul trucker. And so not only are we helping supply the pipeline, we're competing with the pipeline for these instructors and faculty and staff. So that's one of the things that is still a challenge, and why things like GEAR grant, things like the Coca-Cola donation make a big difference. And the funding that came in last year from the legislature through the House, the Senate, and the governor's office that recognized the additional cost of these high-demand programs and high-cost programs that we have. There was an additional $8 million that went into the TCSG line item specifically for high-demand, high-cost programs. That helps ensure that we do have the funding to pay the instructors to expand capacity, to grow these programs. And I think, I'm going to go back just one there because I just love seeing those numbers. I think those numbers tell that story, that investment is paying off. We're growing exponentially. You should have a handout there at your desk. Thanks for handing those out. And if you didn't get one, you want a digital copy, Senator's on the line. I'll make sure I send a digital copy, and I'll send you the updated version of that. And we can make sure you get a copy of it. But that gives you some brief overview of not only what we're doing, but where we are. And if you look on the back, it has a nice map there of the sites that are current. That's changing about every month. There's plans going in, there's things that are completing for those sites. But you can take a look there, and on the front side, you can kind of see a little bit of what we're doing, what the current trends are, and happy to take and answer any questions.
Thank you for your comments today. Questions that I have is, so I did not know that this is a Hope, you could get a Hope Scholarship or a grant, Hope grant towards if you wanted to be a truck driver. So I think that's new information for me to know. And then I was wondering, how long has that been available?
So CDL was one of the original 15, I think it started out with 15, expanded to 17, and now 18 areas. It was one of the original 15. It's been around for a long time. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say 8+ years. That might be, you could fact check me and I'll be totally wrong, but
Okay.
I'll look that up and make sure I get you an exact time frame. But it is an amazing opportunity.
No, I think so too. I was asking because, I mean, I graduated high school in 2008, which I'm aging myself, but I didn't know about that then, so I was wondering what the timeline was on that. And the other question I had was, I think you kind of answered it, but the 24% increase of graduates from 2022 to 2023, is that directly correlated with the investment that the state has made in with the $8 million, or can you explain
So
that?
the 2022 to 2023 is directly correlated to the GEAR funds, the Coca-Cola investment, and those state funds. Now, those state funds, that $8 million came into this fiscal
Sure.
year's budget
Yeah.
for '24. And so we were working on, and presidents are here in the room, working on a focused effort in enrollment in the high demand areas.
Okay.
So Commissioner Dozier and team met across the entire state with every single one of our presidents and their staff and addressing these high demand areas. We saw it from legislature. There was some specific funds in the last year's budget too, in the '23 budget, in aviation and other areas that were specifically there to help reinforce the need for a workforce in those areas. And so the investments from the state, absolutely. The funds from the governor's office through the GEAR grant were critical to expanding that capacity, modernizing equipment, getting additional equipment. And this $8 million that came in this last year into this fiscal year's budget is going to help reinforce that. And there's still a gap there. There is still a gap between what actually cost that student and what it costs us to deliver that training. But we are working to bridge that gap, and those investments are critical to do that.
That's great. I don't think I have any other questions here. But, oh, and the last, well, I guess this is more comment and observation, but it sounds like from DDS to you that there is a worker shortage in terms of folks wanting to stay in those jobs because they're competing with other high-paying jobs as well.
Absolutely. We have to work on salaries.
Sure.
As a state. I mean, it's every job
For sure.
position. It's everything. We're constantly competing with private sector. That's not new. That happened. It exacerbated by the pandemic.
Right.
And the inflation and other things that kind of came along with that. But certainly that's one of the things that we are working diligently on is how do we drive salaries that meet market demands, and how do we retain that talent, because sometimes retaining the talent is not always monetary. There's great benefits of working for the state. There's retirement systems, a lot of things you don't get in private sector. But for a lot of these folks that are getting into it, that allure of a big paycheck is one of those pieces. A big part of that, though, is, as I said earlier, and that $8 million is a part of that. It's bridging that gap between what it cost us to deliver the training and then what we can bring in revenue. And so that's a big help there.
Okay, thank you.
I did want to answer, and I was hoping you were going to ask. I know you asked earlier. I talked with Commissioner there. The percent of females in the market here in Georgia is around 7%.
Right.
7% female drivers. What you might be surprised of is we're about 1.5% higher than the national average of female drivers. That's not reassuring, but it's 7%. That does mean there's a huge opportunity to attract and train folks in that area. And it's just one of those things that, we have an outreach and effort to bring in folks from all demographics, into these high demand careers. But that's one of the things that awareness can certainly help.
Yes, lack of education about this job is what I've been learning, and especially towards the female demographic. I think there's huge potential there.
Yeah, we talk about, manufacturing. I think it happens here too. Manufacturing is dark, dirty, dangerous, and sometimes dull gets added on. The 4 Ds is what the perception is. And it's really none of those today, right? But I do think that truck driving gets some of the same things. Is you get, there's dirty, dangerous, and if it's in the dark, but also that dull piece is, people have a misconception of what the jobs actually are. And so not only it's educating the public, but it's also educating those that are influencing these students and youth today. That is getting the moms and dads and the counselors, the high school teachers involved. Be Proud's a great opportunity for that, to show people what modern day manufacturing, what modern day CDL, what modern day tech jobs are.
Right. That's what Justina mentioned earlier, was that most 18-year-olds don't have someone to talk to about truck driving.
They don't.
Maybe it's an uncle they don't like or something.
We don't see him, he's driving.
So let me ask a couple questions. I want to go a little bit further on Senator Islam's question. So do we know, are there any female-owned trucking companies in Georgia? And if so, how many?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question. I will invoke the power of our research team to do some research there.
I would be interested in, Senator Jones just mentioned one, so I mean, I would be interested to hear from maybe those owners just from that personal experience, and our team will see if we can research that. But I think to Nabila's question, I think that's something we should investigate further. One other question in terms of the job posting slide, employers competing. So I think big picture, we've been talking about, in some cases, large companies have job postings or recruiting or whatever. In all this data, where do owner operators fit in? Like, so literally me, the trucking company owner, and like my 4-member crew or 5-member crew, and I think we heard from one the other day when we were in Hiram, like, where do they fall into this ecosystem of job postings and recruitment that basically are honestly kind of the backbone of, in many cases, the supply chain when we're thinking about rural communities, urban communities, the companies that are basically kind of on the verge of being extinct because of either insurance price pressures, inflation pressures, fuel pressures, all these things that maybe, we don't have, the opportunity, like if I'm a Coca-Cola or someone, but how do they fit into this whole supply chain piece when we talk about needing drivers? And in some of them, I know some of it's, they're more impacted in some ways because of federal regulations, and there's some things that we need to, again, change. But from your perspective of maybe folks that are leaving the technical college and maybe they're going and working for that mom and pop trucking company in South Georgia right out of when they graduate.
Yeah, so I'll comment a little bit on that, and I know my colleagues from the technical college system here will have some comments as well up on the next panel. But just a couple of the biggest challenges there. One is insurance. If you're going to a small mom and pop or owner operator type scenario, and you're right out of school, so to speak, just got your CDL, insurance is going to be a big barrier for you. If you are under the age of 21, the federal motor carrier legislation and your ability to transport interstate product is going to be a barrier for you. In Georgia and anywhere in the state, you can pick up a load of anything from the port in Savannah. You can drive it all the way up to Fort Oglethorpe, but you cannot cross that state line and go over into Tennessee. It's just not possible, right? It's the federal motor carrier legislation until you're 21 years old. If you are a brand new graduate out of one of our programs and you get, offered a job at one of the mom and pop type environments, you may not be able to get insured until you have a year and a half, 2 years of driving experience. That's a barrier. Our team at System Office and within the colleges have met with, DDS, met with Insurance Commission. Those are all things that are being explored, and what does that look like and what does a solution look like? I don't think there is one right now, but those are challenges because you do got to weigh the safety aspect of that, for a brand new driver. There are some of the larger carriers that have training programs internally with ride-alongs and ways self-insured where they can get experience for those drivers. But that is certainly a challenge, and they are, that mom and pop, that owner-operator is disproportionately disadvantaged at the very beginning of that. However, our workforce pipeline piece, and I can go back and pull more of the data, we have graduates working for, I can't say every one of those 1,690 employers, but graduates working for hundreds of different employers across the state. So we're filling the need for those owner-operator and those small type operators, but we're also, working diligently to fill that need of the larger providers.
Do you know what the average age of a student enrolled in a CDL program in TCSG is currently? We know 52 is the average age of, who Commissioner Spencer sees in his licensing. What's the average age of the program or of a student in Georgia?
So I'll have to pull that specifically to the CDL program. For all students, it's roughly 26 years old. That may vary within the CDL program. Our colleagues here within the technical college system.
So we're not talking an 18 or 22-year-old necessarily. We're talking somebody who could be in that 46, 52 age range coming back to school. Okay.
Yeah, more than half of it, if you look at the MC data again, that Lightcast data, more than half of the CDL job holders, not necessarily the CDL license holder, CDL job holders are over 45 in Georgia. Roughly 25% of them are over 55 and nearing retirement. So that average age of 52 holds, but there's a lot of them that are on that leeward side of retirement, and that's going to cause just the same struggle we saw during the pandemic. Those that could retire did. Those that could change and move into other careers did. That kind of wave of change is going to be systemic for some amount of time. That's why it's important to keep growing the pipeline and growing those numbers, because the need to backfill these jobs is much higher every year.
So let me ask 2 more questions, and we'll be sensitive to time. So on one of the slides, you have 7 planned or in progress sites, and I know y'all work around the clock on these. So as one becomes shovel ready or gets to the place where the one in DeKalb County opened, what is the average to basically from planning? And I know funding's involved, and I'm going to get to why I'm asking this question, but once you plan it and you say we need it, I mean, on average, like how long is it taking? Because if we're sitting in this room today and we say there's a work, and I've had this conversation with Commissioner Dozer, we're saying there's an issue. All the chambers of commerce are saying there's an issue. Coca-Cola says there's an issue. I go back to the Russell McMurray example of, when a bridge collapses, we can turn around on a dime and reconstruct the bridge. So my question goes to, if you have 7 or 7+ facilities that are identified, designed, or ready to go, why are we not accelerating, or can we accelerate opening those facilities if we know there's a workforce shortage to close these gaps? Because it seems like government and bureaucracy, not y'all's fault, but it's just kind of like getting in the way, because that's inherently how we operate as a state. But how do we make that more efficient if really we're saying, hey, there's a need, and everybody's screaming saying we need workers, but we're literally taking our time and open these because, there's a budget issue. Like, well, can we reprioritize the budget?
So I'm going to try to answer some of that question, and I like my job. I've been here almost 23 years, so maybe some of it I can't answer, but I'll answer as much as I can.
I mean, I've got ideas. We can cut things to make things happen, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah. So a couple questions there. A couple questions within that one. The first one is 4 of the sites that are on this at 7 planned are actually currently under construction. The one in Columbus is right on the verge of wrapping up. West Georgia, I think, is breaking ground. Okay, I was thinking Columbus earlier when I said that. Breaking ground. The one in Georgia Piedmont has broken ground. The timeline on actually turning that up, though, can take close to a year, 6 months to a year of getting everything graded and poured and building on site, all the other things like that. It takes time. I'll tell you, one of the biggest challenges of actually starting a brand new program is getting trucks. We every single month are buying trucks or approving them, through the state board process, and sometimes we're waiting or running out to get a used model because it just came available. If we don't act now, it will not be there tomorrow. And if you want to buy brand new ones, I think it's 12, 18 months out at a minimum. And in many cases, I think Freightliner and some of the big ones, they sold out of like the next year's model already. So you can't even get in line until they open that ordering section up again. So those are barriers. But how do we accelerate these? We go through the process. similar to every other agency. There's projects that come up. Every college submits a project. It goes before the legislature. The ones that there's priority projects based on the number we get, and then every project goes forward. I'd say CDL is a part of many of those, as well as manufacturing and all the other high demand industries here. But it does go through the legislative process. Things like the GEAR grant were really kind of a one-time infusion that allowed us to do a lot of projects all at once, because those were specific and pitched to fund very in-demand areas, and that let us get a lot of them started. However, when you're out there and you're bidding contracts and everything else, and you're in the middle of a workforce shortage across the board, I'm talking about pandemic time period there, of getting those took some time to get started. So you're starting to see the fruits of them now as they're coming online. I think Columbus is the last one that'll come online from that funding. But yeah, we're working and following the process.
Sounds like the process could be upgraded, but we'll talk about that later.
Commissioner Dozier will be available.
I want these people to succeed, and I mean, I want y'all to succeed too. But I mean, I think to what Senator Jones even just alluded to. I mean, like, it's the cost of raw products is going up. I mean, I've seen projects delayed, and just transparency. I chaired Dr. Newcomb's foundation board, so I lived through his projects and did some pretty awesome projects. But I also think too, just when we think about big picture, like if there's a way to accelerate projects, even if you got to incentivize or do whatever, I mean, in this world we're in now, I mean, I think if there's this huge need, I mean, there's a way to do it. I mean, just speaking from somebody in the private sector, I think there's probably a way to do it. And then last question, and then y'all don't need to hear me talk anymore. I said this at the last meeting, and this is more commentary. You don't have to respond to this because I don't want to put you or Commissioner on the spot. But when it comes to, there is a funding gap for high demand. I know there's a gap. There has been a gap. I honestly think, and applaud y'all for being very good fiscal stewards of your budget. But, if we go back over a few years, I mean, the agency overall has experienced a net cut. And so, from my standpoint, and I'm not going to speak for the other senators, but from my standpoint is that if we're going to be serious about high demand and we're going to be serious about putting more drivers on the street to drive trucks, I would think at some point this gap that exists is going to get fully funded like we do most things in education, whether it's QBE or HOPE or whatever. But I think there needs to be a movement in that direction. And again, it goes back to, what are our priorities and how does that tie to the economy? And I know y'all have done a great job. I mean, this is not a negative to the commissioner, and I love him to death. But I think at the end of the day, like in the legislature, the governor's office, everyone, I think we need to make it more of a priority and make sure that there are no gaps. So next time you make this presentation or when you come to appropriators with y'all's budget in January, on the screen, we know that when you say there's, would you say additional 8 million? This really isn't an additional 8 million. This is, it looks like on paper, but it's really not. I mean, I'm just going to say it out loud, the obvious. But I'm hopeful in the future we can fix that. Because I think between this agency and I, again, appreciate Commissioner Spencer coming, I think in terms of state government, these are the two nexuses of this crisis in terms of workforce that's feeding back to the private sector. And my concern is that, and I think even I've heard Senator Dozal say this in the past, how we're using those private examiners and those private trainers and all that, how it kind of wraps into this ecosystem. I think we got to be sensitive to and make sure there's good and bad actors. But also, too, every time we have a large company come to Georgia, there's a trucking demand, there's a workforce demand. But if on paper we're not funding it at that same level, we're going to have a bigger crisis on our hands because the companies are going to stop coming. And so, anyway, I usually am the one who says the things people don't want to say. But Stephen, thank you for coming. I appreciate everything, and we're going to move to the next panel.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break, and then we'll get started. All right, we're gonna start back up in about 30 seconds. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Senator Islam's experiencing a real-life supply chain issue with her wedding dress. She's going to get me later. I'm going to be in so much trouble. We'll talk about that later. So we're going to hear from our college presidents and leaders on this discussion, furthering the conversation from Mr. Ferguson. And I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed friend, mentor, Dr. Ron Newcomb, the president of Chattahoochee Tech. No offense to the other college presidents, but this is the greatest technical college in Georgia. I'm very biased. Your senators can yell at me later. I also like President Post too, because I once got to represent them, and I also love Northwestern, but Chattahoochee Tech is my backyard. So, Dr. Newcomb, I'll clean up my mess later.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I think. And I prefer to say that we're in the company of 4 great technical colleges, a 5th one in the audience about to come up after us, and there's 17 other peers around the state, right? Yes. And I want to thank you first, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for having this study committee. I think you're putting a spotlight on something that is critical. Georgia is the #1 place to do business. The legislative branch, the executive branch, the technical college, or the technical college system of Georgia, and technical colleges are doing everything they can to help make sure that remains the same, continues to grow and be a bragging point forever and ever. In the first hearing, and you heard a little bit of it alluded to today, you talked about things that rang a bell with us in this sense. Our enrollment, our first job is, as it is with any organization that has customers, is to say, how do you keep what you already have? And then how do you increase it? Well, I think that first hearing focused more on the kinds of issues of how do you keep what you have? And this second committee has transitioned more to what are the things we can do to increase that supply? And the first one, you talked very clearly about issues of legal and insurance issues, government regulation, things within the industry that maybe could be tweaked to it was mentioned several times and again today, to have folks be perhaps a little closer to home a little more often. How do you do that? How do you drive a truck halfway and then have somebody from the West Coast come meet it? Those kinds of innovations. How long does it take to my words, not in the vernacular, attach or detach a trailer to a truck? How much waiting time is there? How much time is there to pick up your load? How much time is there to get it unloaded? But I saw all those kinds of things being considered, and today we're talking more about how do we increase the supply. You've got, in my humble opinion, a great panel of folks here from technical colleges, and again, another one after us, to talk about some of the issues. It's as we go down this table, we're going to self-introduce. I am Ron Newcomb, the president of Chattahoochee Technical College. I have with me Jason Tanner, the executive vice president of instruction. And you see, I'm smart enough to bring somebody that knows more about the details, Senator, about how the, and I think you find the others do as well. First, we want to go down this table. They'll self-introduce, but we want to talk a little bit about the ranges that we have. Where do we offer this? At Chattahoochee Tech, we've got the one location at the North Metro campus. We've got 9 campuses, including the being built Aviation Training Academy at the airport at Paulding. We've got the one location at the North Metro campus. It's central to all the counties that we serve. We do pull students in from a variety of locations. And our enrollment at that site is going up now. We were impaired by, it was, that campus was built on an old poultry farm. And sometimes when you drive trucks relentlessly over certain parts of the parking lot and the driving range, you begin to see some things from the past. We had to redo the driving range. And so it's been done now, we're pleased to say. And of course, we all had the COVID era. And at a time when we were trying to be so very careful, how many students can you put inside the cab of a truck for how long for instruction on the range, actually driving the vehicle? But we're recovered now. We're moving forward. A second range has been requested at the Paulding campus, with which you're very familiar, but at that Paulding campus, and we're excited about that moving forward through the process as it may. And that'll increase the accessibility. And you say, why does accessibility matter? Because I think at each stage of this, the committee has been asking the $64 question is, how does what we're talking about this particular minute affect the supply of truck drivers? That's what it's about. And we think accessibility does affect the supply. So we're eager to get a second location. Some of our peers have more. And we'll talk a little bit about, very quickly, what we do in terms of credit, non-credit, training. I'm going to turn that over to Jason and to speak to very quickly, and then we're going to pass it on down, and they're going to tell you how many ranges they have and what they do.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Jason Tanner. I'm the Executive Vice President for Instruction at Chattahoochee Tech. We do have that one location. Like a lot of our sister institutions, we have the capacity to test our own students after our programs, credit and non-credit. So that does relieve some of the pressure and schedule time with DDS. It does add to some inefficiencies that they experience as well, having to have faculty who test and they're therefore not teaching those students. It's been mentioned several times, this isn't something you can train 100 students at a time. So when we commit to a full-time instructor position at the college, this is not an instructor who's going to have, think classroom full of students, that kind of capacity. We run 6-week-long daytime courses. We run 8-week-long nighttime sessions during semesters so that students can have the opportunity to do both. However, either way, that's a very long commitment for a student. It's 4 10-hour days during that week across those 6 weeks, which obviously would add a burden to the student of time. Regardless of cost, that's a significant time away from potential employment, family, and other commitments. It's a 9-credit-hour program, so that is a reality that all of us would face. It's not something where the students, good for the students, they're not taking core classes. So, the colleges are paid for 9 credit hours, not, the equivalent of an associate's degree. It's the one program in our system that does have non-standard tuition. So we charge a little more for commercial truck driving per hour than we do in other places. And then in the non-credit world, we base it on what that customer would need. So that can be a testing, it can be recertification, or entire training course. So all of us would have that capacity to do it, and I think all of us will speak to similar inefficiencies and then struggles we have with staffing and then finding students.
Right, I think I'm on, great. Good morning, everyone. Are we still morning? Good afternoon, everyone. Yolanda Buford, Vice President of Economic Vice President of Economic Development at Atlanta Technical College, here on behalf of Dr. Victoria Seals, our president. Atlanta Technical College actually had some challenges as it relates to the CDL program. We are one of the sites that was on that list of planned CDL driving range and testing sites. In the Metro Atlanta region, we are the only technical college that does not have a driving range, dedicated driving range, or testing site location. You heard the comment made, I think, by Stephen about using parking lots and anywhere and everywhere that you could find a facility to do your CDL driving, and that's what we've been doing, unfortunately, for many years. We've provided great training services, but have not had that dedicated location. But thanks to the state, we received $3.2 million within the past couple of years for a dedicated CDL lot, and our Fulton County Board of Commissioners has granted us 25 acres of land for us to build that. And so we're hopeful that this fall we will be breaking ground on our Center for Transportation and Logistics for that. We currently train, as Jason mentioned, on the credit and non-credit side of the college, roughly about 100 graduates in our CDL program annually. So we know once we have that testing site available that we can double that number and probably even quadruple that based on getting the trucks, of course, that we're going to need to add to the fleet, as well as being able to do our testing on the sites ourselves. We currently now go to 2 of the DDS locations, and as was mentioned before, the backlog is tremendous, and we're looking forward to the change of that time. But it usually takes our students at the start of the training class, we have to schedule those testing at that point immediately, so that by the time they're completed within the 6 to 8 week period, they're able to have that testing. And then heaven forbids if they have to retest, then that is another backlog situation that we face as well with the students. But we're excited about the opportunity for our Center for Transportation and Logistics, because not only will it be CDL, but it will be supply chain, warehouse, as well as diesel mechanics. So it will be a full service facility that we'll be using. Thank you.
So I'm going to pick on that data point, and not to point at my DDS friends, but isn't that an opportunity in terms of integration, to where if you had a way to manage that yourself? Because if somebody's flunking out of the course or doing something else, I assume you lose that space in line, right?
That is correct.
So
Once you schedule,
it's not like you can just put another student in the...
We've been trying to work closely with DDS to be able to do that. So if for some reason someone drops out, we try to put somebody else in the slot, so they've worked with us to be able to do that. But it's that retesting component that's also a big challenge.
Okay. Opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Heidi Popham. I'm president of Georgia Northwestern Technical College. We serve the 9 counties of Northwest Georgia, and we have 6 campuses. Currently, we have 1 range at our Walker County campus, which is in Rock Spring, and we have a range that we transitioned our parking lot in our Polk County campus into a DDS-approved site as well for training. That currently is working with our line worker program and restricted CDL that they receive, but we're expanding the opportunity there through our non-credit side, which is internship partnerships with corporate partners that sponsor employees that they have to come. They do online classroom theory. They also have a mentor assigned to them. They get the on-the-road training through their employers. That is one way. We do the pre-check, the one-on-one pre-check list on our Polk County campus, and then we also go over any kind of specific skills and do the testing on our Polk County campus. Both our Walker County campus and Polk County campus are testing sites. We're also expanding our non-credit, a little bit quicker option to do the online 2-week portion, and then the employee will bring their employer vehicle. So that's kind of getting around the way of having to purchase all new trucks for our Polk County campus. These are corporate sponsors, so they're using their vehicles that they have to help train. So these are individuals that are probably with a company already that want to advance to get their CDL, and so they're working with us on that. And again, they'll test at our Polk County campus. through both of those programs, we're working to offer those in Spanish as well. So they'll do the instruction and the training. Of course, they will have to test in English, but that helps get over the hurdle there of the language barrier. So we're expanding that opportunity to possibly pick up some additional students. So this semester on our credit side, we are up 12% in our CDL program, which is that one is at our Rock Spring campus. So just looking at different opportunities to be able to meet that workforce need.
And I'll take, these folks are tired of me talking, but I do want to take a point of personal privilege and just say, since I do represent Polk County, I know Representative Kelly and I, we have talked about just the growing Latino population in Cedartown and the workforce opportunities as we've been doing local industry sites, and do want to just say thank you for being innovative and inside of the box, but also being nimble and flexible in terms of meeting that need that's right there in the community on a regional basis. So thank you.
Thank you. I failed to say that we are expanding our driving range. We're adding a permanent driving range so we can get out of our parking lot at our Polk County campus. And so we're working with that engineer now and hope to start construction on that within the next several months. So excited about the additional range in Polk County.
This one's work. Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Anderson, the Vice President of Academic Affairs at Georgia Northwestern, and I just want to briefly go over the credit side of CDL. Like Jason at CTC, the program is 9 credit hours, 3 courses. We have 8 cohorts per academic year. In the fall and the spring, we have 3 cohorts. We run 2-day, 8-week cohorts and 1 evening, 10-week cohort. And in the summer, we have 2 cohorts, 1 day and 1 evening. So what does a student have to do before he or she can start the CDL program on the credit side? Of course, Stephen touched on the age, 21 and over, no issues going outside of Georgia, but 18 to 20-year-olds can come and go through the program, but would only be able to drive in the state of Georgia. They have to complete a valid DOT physical, which is at the cost of a student, it ranges anywhere from $60 to $80. They have to secure a CDL learner's permit from DDS, which at the cost of the student for $10. They have to obtain a 7-year MVR or a motor vehicle report for $8 and pass a DOT drug screen. Now, the drug screen and the MVR has to be done within 30 days of that program start date. So at GNTC, our program director any potential student for CDL comes in and says, I want to be in the CDL program. We put them in direct contact with the program director so he can ensure that he is monitoring them and keeping up with when is that 30-day mark so he can reach back out to make sure those students are staying on top of things. A couple of challenges, which is very consistent with our peers. Right now, being able to accommodate the number of students that we have interested in CDL. We are currently using a wait list. Our spring courses, which start in January, are already full. We are putting them on a wait list for summer. Hiring part-time faculty to teach in this program is very difficult. And it's a little twofold because the pay, if they're credentialed to teach in the program, they're going to make more driving on the road. And the second part of that is the Affordable Care Act hours or workload units, if you will. It limits how much they can teach per week. And I'm just going to be honest, another challenge that we have are students passing the initial drug screen and the random drug screen. Just this semester, this fall, we've lost several students for failing the initial drug screen. But however, even though there are challenges, we have increased our enrollment in that program, our graduates, by 8% from academic year 22 to 23.
You got no questions. Okay. Well, good afternoon. My name is Julie Post, and I am president of West Georgia Technical College.
And I'm here to tell you that with CDL, it is thriving on the west side of the state for sure, right? I mean, you got all of us in a row here. We serve 7 counties and have 5 full-service campuses, but we only offer CDL on 2 of them. We have 1 more coming, as I said, but you can't just, we need asphalt, okay? But you can't just pick a parking lot and displace your students from parking in order to do this. So we have one we're getting ready to break ground, but I can tell you it's been a year in the design of the CDL range, and the building that goes along with it has taken us more than a year to make it to where we're getting to within the state's, budget allowance and so forth. But we're excited that it's coming.
I bet you that design change in itself probably was added cost in terms of the
$2 million.
Yeah, so inefficiencies.
Every one of our campuses are always coming to me. Can we offer CDL? Can we offer CDL? And I'm going to tell you, for instance, on our Douglas campus, which I know is Senator Ana Vitarde's area as well, we could do it. We have the land, but you have to clear it, and the infrastructure around it is not there. So the roads to and from our campus could never handle that kind of traffic. So there are lots of barriers to trying to do that, but I can tell you every single one of them would love for us to be offering CDL on every one of our campuses. In addition, we have at least 4 high school systems that would love for us to be figuring out ways to do dual enrollment in CDL. And so I'm kind of trying to figure out how can we do that in a way that gets a student to a point where they can test as soon as they turn 18, and maybe we can snag in some seniors. But there are also challenges and barriers with federal and state regulations that we need to find some ways around to work to go ahead and make that happen. And in many of our rural counties, that's a real option that we would love to be able to explore. But last year, we had 197 students in our CDL programs, which was up 11% from the year before. But we only awarded 114 certificates, and she spoke exactly as to why. It's the drug test passing. Now, I'm not saying I want people on drugs driving trucks, but I do want to make it clear that that's some of the challenges we face with getting them all the way through the program. This current fall, though, right now, enrolled in our programs are 130 students. So we're on par to be at about 250 enrolled by the end of this year. Right now, that 130 that we have is 44% more than we had last fall. And I'll tell you that we last year offered 8 sessions, 2 on each campus each day and 2 at night. And this year we added an additional cohort, so we're at 10 that go 5 days a week for a shorter period of time. So now we're offering 10 sessions. So that's been one way that we have worked to expand our enrollments. We also have begun last year the apprentice program. She called it internship. It's the same thing. We're working with companies who have employees that need their employees trained to get the CDL, but they're fully capable of assisting and partnering with us in that training process. So they take 2 courses online, and we do the driving and all of that, and we test them. Both of our CDL pads are also set up to be testing sites too. So when we add this 3rd one, we know that we'll then be able to add a whole nother layer of students, because we have about 150 on a wait list all the time. 150 people wanted to get into our program. And we also offer the line worker program like GNTC, which is a super huge need, and they have to have CDL before that. So it has impacted our line worker program because our students cannot get that prior to enrolling in the line worker program. So it just creates a whole another layer of opportunities for us to figure out new ways to do things. I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Bowie, who is the Vice President of Academic Affairs at West Georgia Tech, to talk a little bit more personally about the challenges and the opportunities we have to find ways to get around things.
Thank you. I'm Kristen Bowie, Vice President of Academic Affairs, West Georgia Tech. And really, as far as things to add, I'm not sure I can add a whole lot to what's already been said here. We are continuing to look at ways to expand our enrollment. Primarily, as Dr. Post shared already, we run things on the credit side. We are looking at how we can partner with our economic development non-credit side and potentially share some resources. We've been fortunate enough to get a special project, for example, from the Department of Forestry, so we're looking at how can we fund a position that we'll share on the credit side and also on the non-credit side for some of those special projects that to get around or to work with some of our challenges with ACA and limiting part-time instructors. So enrollment continues to be a a barrier for some of our students simply from a capacity standpoint. We're also looking at how we can expand in other ways for restricted CDL licensures for things like the lineman program and bringing it to the credit side. Retention, also a challenge for exactly the same reasons, whether they can get through for the drug or testing and or the abilities to get through. So we are working on strategies for retention so that we can get them out into the workforce. Other challenges we have are specific to supply chain. Mr. Ferguson mentioned it earlier with the purchasing of, and the challenges with the purchasing of trucks specifically. We have 2 in the pipeline right now, and we're worried that we're not going to be able to get them delivered in time for the funding. So that is a tremendous barrier. The increasing of costs with fuel are some of those, and then of course we have faculty challenges. Again, Mr. Ferguson mentioned that there's 1,670 competing jobs, and we're in that job market as well, trying to obtain additional instructors so that we can increase capacity, so that we can get additional students in the classroom, which translates to drivers on the road.
So if you and Elizabeth had unlimited resources and could design whatever program you wanted to eliminate wait lists, what would you do? Government wasn't in the way or anything else?
Well, I think the first, I'm sorry, go ahead.
More ranges, more trucks, more instructors, and we'd make it happen.
That's basically it.
Okay.
But also, you know, we can't pay, in some cases, even 75% of what a truck driver makes. So to balance out the costs that we have for our programs, as was alluded to, when you can only have a certain number to meet regulations per instructor, you're just adding and increasing that gap between the funding that we have to continue to operate these programs versus what it costs us.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested, and we can do this later, but going through a financial exercise, kind of mean like we're doing on other, whether it's tax credits or other things in the state. I mean, if you have a 95% placement rate and you have a high graduation rate, obviously there's an ROI there, but I'd like to see how does that translate into basically your bottom line investments into salaries, staff, equipment. And I know this isn't the time or place, but I know like we've talked about, I mean, you have labs, and some of y'all's colleges may, you know, be experiencing this, that have equipment from the 1980s, and this is 2023, which is pretty insane. So I think just kind of go through that exercise, because I know there's folks on the computer and, you know, other of my colleagues who would ask the question, like, what is the ROI, justifying the dollars? And again, just going back to pure efficiencies, because, you know, if we're building a range, you know, is there a way to do it on a, you know, where 2 colleges are coming together and sharing resources, and then sensitive to parts of the state like myself and Senator Gooch and folks in South Georgia, where we know as we talk to businesses in Alabama recruiting them to Georgia, the number one thing they're asking about is workforce. But if you have a waiting list and I need truck drivers and I have 150 people on a waiting list, they're basically going to tell you, well, I'm just going to deal with Alabama, I'm not coming. And I think we've seen a little bit of that in the background in Haralson County, maybe Carroll County a little bit, in terms of we talk to these presidents and CEOs coming across state lines. So I think that's an opportunity. I didn't want to take over, Dr. Newcomb. I apologize.
Senator, if you're going to talk like that, you can take over anytime you want to, sir. For 4 decades, the technical college system of Georgia, under whatever name it's been titled, has put its emphasis on workforce development. I think everybody in here would agree we've got a proud track record of accomplishing that. You see from this panel that everyone is hungry to do that, to do more of it. I think that trend towards getting there has been accelerated to the good in the last few years. I think we see more resources through strategic industry emphasis from the legislature, the executive branch, the technical college system. You see that we're hungry if they said it all, if we can get more faculty in a competitive market where everybody wants those folks. I mean, you got to want to not go drive a truck to want to be a teacher. And one advantage, of course, working condition, you're going to be closer to home. You have some, you work with students. You might not be working in other things in the industry that you'd rather not be working with. You're working with students. You're seeing the graduates and so forth. The operational cost, yes, there's a gap. We're not here to speak directly to what that gap is. It was said at the last one of these study committees, gosh, somebody expressed that there's a reluctance to crank up, so to speak, another truck driving. No, we'll crank up truck driving as often as we can, everywhere we can, day or night. If we can get more students who want to come, that's an issue too. I don't know if the world's noticed, but students want to come at a particular time of the day. And if Jason and I have talked about, we're going to run 24/7 our truck driving our range until the neighbors complain. Well, the drawback from that is students not wanting to come, and the times where we could be offering it if we could find the faculty and make it happen. So that's a speech, but it's a speech for a good cause. I'm very proud to be part of the technical. Everybody up here is proud to be part of the Technical College System of Georgia. You said it yourself. And we're anxious to do everything we can to help increase the supply of the truck drivers. Questions from you either or the.
Well, I'll just make one comment, and then I'll get to see if Senator Dozel has a question. But I mean, I do want to recognize that I think we have heard amongst your entire group. I mean, there is private sector investment you're receiving one way or another, either directly or through, the state foundation, local foundations, to offset costs. So I just want to make sure the audience that's listening or listens to this later, they see meeting notes, that it's clear that
and absolutely
we're not advocating for, I think, a greater
start off
size
with Coca-Cola,
of government, but I think the level of private sector investment has been significant. I think the question is how sustainable is that as we look at just the pure population growth, businesses coming to Georgia, and what does this model need to be? And I think we need to even have conversation. What is how does that blend in with the private sector? So, Senator Dozel, do you have any questions, comments on this topic?
Mr. Chairman, that's all very helpful information. Thank you to those on the panel for presenting today.
Thank you. I can't tell. Is Senator Gooch back? No, he's not back. He's up there in the mountains, breathing mountain air. Senator Jones, do you have any questions, comments?
Well, of course. There was a model that was used when we broke ground a couple of weeks ago on this $12 million facility in DeKalb. I was proud to see that it was state funds, it was federal funds, it was county funds, it was even the city, the local city in Stonecrest participated, and there was some outside foundation dollars. Do you all see that kind of support in your respective areas as well?
Yes, Senator Jones, I'll address that. Excuse me. Again, we mentioned the state funding. We also receive funding from the city of Atlanta, Fulton County funding, as well as the acreage land, and then some of our private corporate partners. So in order for us to move forward with the Center for Transportation Logistics, we had to have a variety of funding streams to be able to do that.
In a perfect world, when is that going to open?
Perfect world, I'm hoping within a year, so I'm going to
Okay.
put that out in the universe that will happen.
Okay, because that sounds like it's a very important project.
Parts of the state, do you see the same kind of support from the local?
So, we opened a new campus a year ago, which had significant support from Carroll County and the city of Carrollton and the community itself and the legislators from that area. Our range that we're getting ready to open, we have utilized a good bit of our federal money that we drew down for lost wages. That was the best way for us to really meet workforce demands in Haralson County. And so that building that will go on there will also have 40 welding booths in it, because it has we need to get some more industrial out in that area, and host our line worker program and our CDL program. We have had Carroll EMC, Georgia Power, all of our power companies have helped us with various aspects of things that support the CDL and the line worker, because the two go so hand in hand. But right now we are using
we have a major campaign going for all the private funding to put all the equipment inside this building. So it will be, funded in multiple ways.
We've utilized state funding for our Walker County campus. We just had it resurfaced, but in Polk County we have a large partnership with Georgia Power that helped us with our line worker program, which also includes our CDL. So, and then working with some other EMCs that have assisted us as well. So great community partners to offset the cost of some of that. Federal funds?
I'll say all of us have likely used our federal Perkins funds. We get them every single year. We use them to purchase equipment for all of our academic programs, the lion's share of each of our, I would think you guys would agree with me. But that is, like right now we ordered 2 trucks for our new range, and Perkins funding has to be not just allocated by the end of that fiscal year, but spent and paid for. And so we're on pins and needles praying and begging that it's going to make its way through and we're going to get those. Otherwise, we're going to have to find other funding for that. But I know all of us utilize Perkins funding for situations like this, even in some cases to start a program by funding a faculty member for the first year when it becomes so challenging to afford it and get your enrollment going. So every one of us has had faculty at one point or another on federal funding from the Perkins grant too.
Senator Jones, we've done the same. We have put out a request. We are still awaiting, hopefully, that we will get that. But we have reached out to our local federal delegation for support.
I had a question. I wanted to ask if any of you, maybe off the top of your head, had any data about the retention rates of these graduates. Like, what I'm trying to understand is, like, we get these graduates, they get a trucking job, but like, what is the retention rate? Like, because I know truck driving has a high turnover rate.
This is an indirect answer, but it's good. We feel that we hear that anecdotally and feel it intuitively. I will say that we have been from time to time. Can we shorten the program by a week or two? And our response to that is we've determined that the data points tell us that people that stay that extra week or two and get some more do better. So we've not pursued that.
I'd also add that at Chattahoochee, we took our data for the last 6 years. The youngest average truck driving student for that year has been 37 at our institution, where we've had years where outside of truck driving, the average student is about 24. So we've had students who have done quite well when they make it through the program on licensure and retention, because realistically, this is probably third career for some of the students. We've had average truck driving years where the average truck driving student is 44 when they've started, Chattahoochee Tech. So it's potential that they do well compared to some of our other programs for that retention or staying with their initial hire, because they are a much more seasoned student. They clearly had planned out being a commercial truck driver, because they look often very different from the rest of our student body. And I would imagine their data looks very similar. It is the average student versus commercial truck driving student are often 2 different people coming to the college.
Got it. Thank you.
I would add just briefly that oftentimes once a graduate from any of our programs enters the workforce, oftentimes we lose track of them. So official data on that is difficult, but where we do have touch points to get that, and oftentimes anecdotally, is through our program advisory committees. And that's really where those partnerships exist, and that's why they continue to stay partners with the college in those capacities as advisors, and it's because we are a workforce pipeline for them. And if we were losing a lot of them through some of those partners, I think a lot of us would hear about it in that capacity as well. And for the most part, we're not seeing that any more than some of our other program areas.
And, it is a selling point when someone wants to name a CDL classroom, because they want their sign up inside there, because they want the students to walk into that building and see, I can go to work for, in this case, Wayne Davis Concrete. So Just putting it out there for anybody here who wants to name a room. We're all here willing to help you. But I'm always asking for money. That being said, we have companies that want to come in and talk to our students, and I know everybody here would welcome that industries coming in just to spend 15 or 20 minutes of a class at the beginning of a class to say, hey, we're hiring, here's what our job market looks like, here's what our needs are, because typically by the time they're done, they most all have jobs. So.
It's probably no secret. I'm a big Richard Davis fan, so that doesn't shock me at all that they did that. So, Dr. Newcomb, thank you for bringing this esteemed crowd together and coordinating with Commissioner Dozier and y'all's office. So, thanks for being here.
We're delighted. I want to, last closing thought is I want to give a shout out to our faculty.
Yep.
Diane Geis is here, an associate dean who works with those faculty as well, and we got to say it for our faculty. We love every one of them. Stay with us forever. Wherever you're faculty in the state of Georgia, think about coming to Chattahoochee Tech. Just kidding, guys. Thank you for the faculty. Amen.
Well, that's a great segue to our very last presentation. Yeah, I think in all seriousness, I mean, the faculty is what makes it happen. We just work here. So Carrie Wilson, who chairs the commercial truck driving program at Southern Regional Tech. So you've noticed today we've had almost every region of the state represented. Sorry, East Georgia, we left you out this time. But I think just kind of hear firsthand as we wrap up just what our faculty and all these schools and colleges are experiencing, and just to share some thoughts on that. And I do want to recognize Amy Carter, who works in the president's office, and I know is no secret to the legislature, and what you've done, Amy, in South Georgia and fighting for the folks in your backyard. So thank you for being here today and making it all the way up here. So Carrie, it's over to you to close out. I don't have any comments once Carrie's done. We will send around notes. We will announce the next meeting in the next few days. If you can stay for the tour, please stay for the tour. I do want to thank Senator Dozal for joining us. We'll get on Senator Gooch for partially being here. I have to give him a hard time because he gives me a hard time every single day. And taking this conversation seriously. And Kevin Perry, once again, thank you for opening your doors and hosting us. So, Carrie, close us out, please.
Okay, hi everybody. My name's Carrie Wilson. I work at Southern Regional Technical College down in, my office is out of Tifton, Georgia. Southern Regional covers 11 counties in southwest Georgia. I have 30 years of truck driving experience. I started working for Southern Regional as an instructor in 2010 and then worked my way into the program chair position. Just on a side note, to address the wage, let me give you a comparison. My husband is a truck driver. In 2015, when I became the program chair, our annual salary was within $5,000 of each other. Today, he makes twice, a little over twice what I make. So when you're talking about wages not keeping up with the industry, that's what I'm talking about. Okay? And I think you'll find that everywhere. So a lot of our instructors come because they want to instruct, not for the money. Okay? There's a couple of things I want to share with you, and some of those are the innovations we've made with our truck driving at Southern Regional. Our program is run a little differently than a traditional program where 12 to 18 students come on campus. They're there all day, every day for 7.5, 8 weeks. Our program is actually 10 weeks. It's 2 5-week sessions. The first 5 weeks is 100% online. Campus, the students do not come to campus. The second 5 weeks is in the behind the wheel training, and students only come in 2 days a week. So they have to come in 2 days a week for the second 5 weeks. They are on campus a total of 10 days. And we're able to do this by embracing technology. So before COVID hit, I had been studying ways to make our program more efficient. We seem like you have 18 students and you have 4 or 5 trucks. There are students standing around waiting for their turn in the truck. That's inefficient. So when COVID hit, we were tasked with the reducing the truck, the student ratio in the truck. So what we did is we took the data we had collected prior to COVID on the actual behind the wheel time that a student spends actually operating a truck while they're there. And we put everything else online in interactive assignments, all the observation time of how do I operate a truck, how do I release the brakes, how do I do this kind of stuff, is now all interactive assignments online. So that's one way we've made our program more efficient. We register at a 4-to-1 ratio with our instructors. We split the class in half, 2 students to 1 instructor Monday and Wednesday, 2 students to 1 instructor Tuesday and Thursday. So literally the entire time they are there, they are doing something with a truck. There is no more standing around at all. It's very efficient, and our programs overlap. So we have a new program that begins every 5 weeks. So you don't have to wait 10 weeks. It starts every 5 weeks within the term. That way, as soon as one class ends and another class begins, you don't have one instructor teaching the classroom while the others are doing this, waiting for their students to be ready to get in a truck. We roll on. Those trucks never stop anymore. And so it's become a very efficient program, okay? One of the things that was mentioned earlier was the internship program through non-credit as a partnership with an employer. But TCSG also has a credit side internship that qualifies for the Georgia Hope and Hope Career Grants. And it utilizes the employer's vehicles and an on-the-job trainer with the employer. Now, they do have to bring their truck in for a final exam with us, but the benefit of that is that it's covered under the Hope Career Grant. So it's no cost to the employee. We can add it to our credit programs when they're already full, because they're not requiring a seat in our trucks. We can add them to an already full cohort. All we have to do is monitor that they're complying with ELDT regulations and then perform a 2-hour exam at the end of the program. And all of this is under the Hope Grant side. And the panel that was up here from TCSG colleges, they covered a lot of the non-credit side, so I'm not going to touch on that. But I want to give you an example of how the credit internship could work. Last month at the Senate committee meeting on expanding Georgia's workforce, Clint Bueller spoke on behalf of the Association of County Commissioners. And he said they are having a truck driver shortage because they can no longer provide in-house CDL training to their employees, which is true. Under ELDT regulations, you have to be a certified registered trainer. But they could partner with us. We could provide the compliance part, and they could roll on training in their in-house truck driver training program. It seems like a win-win situation for everyone. They don't lose a valuable employee. We don't have to make them wait until January to come in our classes, and we don't have to buy the equipment. So we're using the employer's equipment. It might be an EMC. It could be a hot shot, you know, those dually pickups with the gooseneck trailer. They require a CDL. It could be a Class B driver hauling a dump truck for the county. If they only come through our traditional programs, then we have to own all that equipment in order to train them. And this is an avenue for us to be able to provide them our expertise in training and compliance, and they can still keep training on the job with a partnership with a college. So this is an accredited program through TCSG, and it's available at all the technical colleges, along with our traditional training. There are a couple of challenges that our programs face. You heard a lot of budget issues and things like that. But we have a really strong partnership with DDS, and DDS has made a lot of changes recently over the last few years that are doing great. But I have been a CDL third-party examiner since 2016. So I can tell you firsthand where we could strengthen our relationship with DDS. I'll give you 2 examples. The first one is that DDS provides third-party examiner certification to an instructor that wants to be certified to give a CDL exam. So we go through DDS's training. It's a week-long training. It's usually held in between Georgia. Everyone from the state has to come to that one location. I believe that Georgia could do what Florida is doing. Florida partners with its vocational schools to allow them to conduct CDL examiner training. And if that could happen with us, then that training could be scheduled outside of our academic calendars. So right now, we have no control over the scheduling, and we have an absent instructor for a week. And we have we teach one-on-one in a truck, so when we have an instructor missing, it is a big deal. So that would really help with that. Now, Georgia code prevents it, but the federal regulations does not prevent it. So it is possible. The second one that would strengthen for our third-party examiners would be when we conduct a CDL exam, whether it be a graduate of our program or a public, someone from the public, third-party examiners only have the ability to verify the driver's license of the applicant. So we can go onto the DDS website, we can verify that their license is valid. We do not have access to verify that their permit is valid. So you can get a CDL disqualifying citation, and it may suspend your regular driver's license. It may not suspend your regular driver's license, but it will disqualify your CDL permit. We have no way of knowing that. So we risk doing an invalid test on an unlicensed driver. Now, DDS has allowed us access as a third-party examiner. We do have access to this DDS system called CSTEMS, where we enter our test results after a CDL test. I believe we should have access to the CDL information system, which would allow us to verify a permit prior to conducting a test. So those are 2 things with DDS that I think would strengthen our relationship as far as on the ground, doing the work kind of stuff.
Real quick on that last one, how many states, if we talk about collaboration between agencies,
all I know is that Florida does with their vocational schools.
But the second part of that, in terms of
that I do not know.
Okay, just curious. Thanks.
Yep. So there was some budget issues brought up, and from a program chair perspective, I want to explain why some of our programs are so expensive to run. It's important to point out that the maintenance and repair needs for our training vehicles are significantly different than a vehicle that is operated in industry. So a commercial vehicle is designed to haul heavy loads for continuous miles. We don't do that. We never haul a load, or rarely. We stop and start all day long. A group of students may put a truck through a startup procedure 20 or 30 times a day. So we twist them and we turn them on the back and range. And so we abuse our equipment in order to train these drivers, because we don't train them just to hold the steering wheel and drive down the road for 100 miles. That's not what we do. So our trucks, especially the newer model trucks, they do not like being treated that way, okay? And aside from supply chain issues, the labor costs for a diesel mechanic, a licensed mechanic, in the last year has went from $95 an hour to $195 an hour. And some of these after treatment exhaust systems, like the DEF systems, you know, with the after treatment systems, our last repair was $17,000 for one item on one truck because of the after treatment systems. So it has gotten so bad that we actually took 2,000 Volvos off our surplus list and put them back into service. One for the students' use, and the other one for parts to keep the first one running. That's how bad it has gotten, and we're trying to be as efficient as possible with our funding, but it is getting way out of hand, and we just need some help to cover the cost of our program, to actually running our programs. I got one other thing, you know, I did a little research and some things getting ready to speak today, and I think I may have a solution, and I have an idea that I want to share. And that is, we graduated our first dual enrollment CDL student this spring. And changes in the HOPE grant has now allowed high schoolers to use the HOPE career grant before using up all of their dual enrollment hours. So it opens the door for truck driving. So my idea is that we could do a recognized dual enrollment pathway that feeds into an internship that allows an inexperienced graduate to get the miles to become an insurable driver. So this is what I'm thinking. We could get them ready for their permit, do most of their ELDT theory all before 18. They could spend unlimited number of hours on a simulator, and let me tell you, the simulators are getting very real. I mean, they're very lifelike. They could do all that before they were 18. When they're 18, they get their CDL permit. We give them some behind-the-wheel training. They take all their ELDT exams, and then they go to work for a company. It could be a county agency. It could be a private carrier. But they go to an external site where our insurance covers them as a driver. It'd be very similar to a nursing student's clinical rotations with an owner-operator lease agreement thrown in. So if it's a private company, let's say we'll use Coca-Cola as an example, they could lease on with us as a college, and our insurance could cover not only the driver but their vehicle during the internship while they're gaining miles. And if the internship's 2 years, then they can get 150,000 miles in that time, so then they become insurable. The other part of this aspect is we could partner with the Georgia Ports Authority to offer in-state hauling from the ports to inland staging areas under an internship. Okay? So there would be a couple of challenges. There'd be some insurance issues that we'd have to work out. The other thing is when you pick up interstate freight, you fall under federal interstate rules, which eliminates an 18 to 21-year-old. But there is an exception, and that exception is if your primary business is not transportation. And if it's under an internship with TCSG, our primary business is education. So I think it's doable. It checks all the boxes. It attracts younger students, younger drivers. It gets them through the program. It gets them covered on their insurance so they get insurable miles, and then we could supply them to the workforce needs of Georgia. So Anyway, that's my thought. A couple of partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, this is, very thoughtful presentation. I think there's some good nuggets here. I do like, just, again, another state is, rethinking how they collaborate and share funds. As we kind of wrap up, we're already kind of wrapped up, but I'm going to let these senators and Senator Delzall, if there's any quick comments or thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our presenters today. I didn't hear any word in here about tort reform. I guess that's not an issue, huh? But certainly, as this issue comes up repeatedly in the General Assembly, I think it would be helpful if the industry leaders and the educators could spend some time educating us on the importance of tort reform. Thank you.
I had some closing comments. So what I've learned today is traditionally this industry is dominated by older males, and the trucking industry has a significant untapped potential labor force among women and younger individuals. I liked your idea, work smarter, not harder. And the great thing about the mile pay is that it doesn't care if you're a man or a woman, there's no glass ceiling in trucking. By improving working conditions, implementing support for long hauls, and addressing wage issues, I think this industry could have a broader appeal. And, also addressing the high turnover rate is very important. We need to keep these people in these jobs. And so I think that, a lot of great solutions were presented today, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to solve the truck driver shortages.
Yeah, Senator Dizzle, he signed off. But yeah, thank you to all the speakers who came, being thoughtful. I can tell a lot of work went into your thoughts and comments. There are some topics we will cover at the next meeting. I know one of them, and I appreciate Commissioner McMurray's office. We'll have updates from the DOT in terms of truck parking, and I think other pieces around that of what they're working on. I'm sure we'll have more discussion on tort reform, and there could be other conversations as we kind of wrap up. If anybody today has anything specific you want submitted outside of what's in the presentation, or let me say it this way, other extra data to supplement your presentation today, please just give that to myself or Anna so we can make sure that's included in the report as we pull all this information together, because it sounded like there was a lot of good ideas, past ideas that we need to enhance or dust off and renew, or new ideas we need to consider. So, but I in particular want to say thank you to TCSG and DDS for sharing how y'all are kind of connected and working through all these challenges across the state. Positive stuff. So to my colleagues, thank you for coming over, hanging out, and we'll do it again next time. So till then, thank you.